It's time for MacBreak Weekly. We got a big panel today. Andy, Alex, Rene, and Lory Gil are all here. Of course, the first thing we're going to talk about is the new Apple credit card and the prospects of an Apple bank. Then we've got to talk about the next generation Macintoshes that might be running on ARM and what that means for us and iPad. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about folding phones. There were quite a few announced this week in Barcelona. Will Apple do a folding phone? It's all coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 650, recorded Tuesday, February 26th, 2019. Armed and ready. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian software powers the full spectrum of collaboration between IT teams and the rest of your organization. Visit Atlassian.com/IT to see what IT can be by giving their products a try for free. And by Sophos Cybersecurity. In an age of evolving cyber threats, you need evolved cybersecurity. Powered by artificial intelligence, Sophos can detect threats before they strike, killing ransomware, viruses, and other cyber threats dead in their tracks. Get a free security scan or a free trial today at sophos.com. And by Molecule. Molecule is the world's first molecular air purifier that reduces symptoms for allergy and asthma sufferers. For $75 off your first order, visit molecule.com and enter the promo code MacBreak. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show where we get together with some of the funnest, and I know that's not a word, but that's what they are, funnest Mac journalists, Apple journalists in the biz, and sit around and gab. And since we're kind of in between Apple events, it's all going to be gab today, starting with the guy right here to my left, Mr. Alex Lindsay.
Hello, hello.
From the Pixel Corps, in studio with us today. The rest of them are far, far away, like Andrew Ihnatko. He is in the frigid east.
This isn't cold. This is just crisp.
Crisp. It's a crisp. What is it? A crisp 40 degrees?
Oh, with the wind chill, it's only -8. It's fine. No, I was looking at the weather app this morning. I think, oh wow, that's like 45, 46. I didn't think it was going to be that warm. And that's actually that's like the wind speed this morning. Okay.
Oh, yikes. Andrew from
it was fun last night to listen to my UPS clicking on and off and on and off and on and off all night.
Oh, the power kept going out, huh?
Oh yeah.
Boston Public Radio.
I had my plan B. I had my plan B all set, but didn't have to use it.
As
I see, we ran out of. I was so concerned about wasting power that I didn't want to run down the batteries on my shaver.
That bad. Oh, that's yours. Also with us, Lory Gil. She's in the beautiful, balmy Sacramento area. Hello, Lory Gil.
Warm and sunny. It's actually raining today, but
yeah,
I mean, I can't complain about
too.
the weather because I don't have a 46 wind speed with negative whatever degree cold. I don't even understand that.
Do you know who's going to win that battle? Our friend from the Great White North, Mr. Rene Ritchie of imore.com. He's in Montreal. Beautiful day in Montreal today.
It's just, I need this to end, Leo. It was like above zero, freezing rain, then below zero, everything froze. We had ice there. It's like an ice and snow coffee crisp now, and you never know where you're going to slip. Just enough.
We are gathered today to talk about rumors, nothing but rumors, but lots of them. The one I thought was most interesting, and I immediately thought of you, Alex Lindsay, because you've been saying Apple should start a bank for a long time. Wall Street Journal says Apple will be teaming up with Goldman Sachs to create a credit card. That's a first step, though.
Shocked. I'm shocked.
Shocked.
Right.
I think a lot of the stories we're going to see today have to do with Apple trying to make money on subscriptions, to be honest with you. Trying to make more money per customer because hardware sales are slowing. This is an obvious way to do it. Goldman Sachs already has a bank called Marcus, which they created a couple of years ago because their securities trading business wasn't doing quite as well as they'd hoped.
You know, that banking product name makes me think that they hired some eager young go-getter at the age of 28 to bring some fresh ideas to banking. And he said, let's not call it Fidelity Reserve Plus checking and banking. Let's just give it a fun modern name like Marcus.
It is a strange name, isn't it? Marcus is
self-conscious.
like a lot of these
It's
online only banks offers a very high rate of savings at 2.25% APR, no fee fixed rate loans. I don't know if you get it's a bank, it's FDIC, I think, so I don't know if you get a checking account or anything like that. Apple making a credit card, I guess, kind of makes sense because right now, if you use your credit card with Apple Pay, the lion's share of the revenue goes to the credit card company, right? Not to Apple. They get a fraction of that, but they'd get it all if it was an Apple credit card. They also, according to the Journal, plan to add some features that will encourage people to use it, like planning, financial planning, budgeting.
That's the interesting
money
part,
management. Why is that interesting?
Because what these implementation sounds like it's going to take a page from the Apple Watch and Apple Health book, where you're encouraged to like close your rings by paying off debt or by filling up savings accounts. It'll be almost like that coaching and reward system where, because right now it's so easy. The days go by. I say that as somebody whose tax window is rapidly closing here in Canada. You forget to put money aside. You forget. You have bills that come in. You're traveling. This will just say like you've paid down this much credit. Wouldn't it be great if you paid down this much today? You put away this much savings this week. If you just put away an extra few dollars, and it'll sort of walk people through the process of getting better financial health.
Well, and also, of course, if you want to use those tools, it will incent you to run as many transactions as possible through it, right? Because that way it has perfect knowledge of what you're spending, what you're borrowing,
as long as like right now, American Express is really good on iPhone. Like the minute I pay for anything, I get a push notification. I can go there. I can see a list of it, and that's all integrated into the wallet app. But this would have like first party status, and you imagine they would bundle in things like when you use it, you get points that you can redeem at the Apple Store. Would be really interesting if they started full. The only thing I don't like about this is that things like Goldman Sachs, things like that are very regionalized. They're almost like little fiefdoms. They don't really apply globally. And that's been the issue with the Apple iPhone upgrade program as well. And that's why I liked it that Apple partnered with American Express, because it instantly made Apple Pay available in a much wider series of regions, because American Express is effectively their own bank. And I think, yes, this is like the Motorola rocker of this idea to me. It's like we're going to find an integration partner and make like a really bad version of it. And then in 2 or 3 years, Apple realizes, like Alex has been saying, hey, we're sitting on $250 billion. What if we were our own bank? And then they wouldn't have to do the usurious fees that have a lot of people upset about this deal, because they don't want Apple associated with.
Are there regulatory reasons they don't just step out and do it?
They could put it under FileMaker. Let FileMaker work.
Well, I think that the thing is that there are definitely huge regulatory issues that Apple has to deal with, but they're not any deeper than the FDA.
There are a lot of startups that are online banks now, right?
And the big advantage of doing things that are hard is that it's hard for other people to do them. So if Apple goes through the trouble and uses their scale and uses their ability to do that, it means that they're able to do things that other people will have a hard time following, and it gives them a...
One of the things the Journal says is Apple has contracts with banks that prevent it from making their new card the default in the wallet. Apple risks angering banks whose cards account for the bulk of the transactions running over Apple Pay. So, and of course, all the regulations are national. So, before that gets to Canada, they have to have a partner in Canada. I mean, it does get very complicated.
I think that this was a glimmer in Apple's eye when they started Apple Pay. I don't think this is something that they just decided to do because the iPhone sales were going down. I think that
like Apple Pay was a glimmer when they did the first Passbook app, and then they got to Apple Pay.
Yeah, and so I think that this is you couldn't bring this out first, because then none of the banks would partner with you. But now that you've partnered, you have all these people using Apple Pay, and the thing is, if the banks took their cards away, we would. Here's the thing right now. If the banks take their card away now, we'll all just jump to the Apple one. Now they have a place for you to go if your bank, because most of us don't give a crap about our bank. Most of us,
I think banks are realizing that it's so easy to change now.
Yeah, and we don't care about them. Because why we don't care is because they don't care about us.
I literally set up a Marcus account with Goldman Sachs in a couple of minutes.
Right.
And it was incredibly easy, and they made it very simple. I could have I didn't finish it. Yeah. Now I'm getting emails every few minutes saying, why didn't you finish? Why didn't you finish? You should have finished. You're so close. One of the things the Journal says is that Apple and Goldman considered at one point creating a more ambitious financial offering that would provide financial management beyond the credit card. But Apple executives worried that tapping into people's bank accounts would raise privacy concerns.
Which they could possibly manage if they were doing it themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I would rather trust Apple than Mint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
But the question is, can they actually make this into a profitable service as opposed to a promotional service for themselves? Because unfortunately, the reason why banks keep hitting you with fees and annual membership things is because that's where they make their money from. If they weren't able to hit you with overdraft charges, if they weren't able to make you pay for services that are just moving bits from one place to another, they wouldn't have the sort of profit margins. This is why Wells Fargo got into so much trouble, because they're saying, well, all we got to do is keep getting people to open new accounts. Even when they say no, don't open a new account. Let's open a new account for them and make sure that they don't notice a $40 fee that's being charged to them every single year. So it's as with almost anything that Apple does. The big question will always be, is this something they're doing because they want to have that club in their bag, or is there something where they feel as though they can actually bring something to the marketplace that isn't being done already?
There's no question that the credit cards are valuable, that make money. I mean, you can't fly on an airplane anymore without the airplane trying to, all the flight attendants trying to hawk their airline's credit card at you. It's become,
well, that's the thing. Like, American Express isn't a traditional bank. Like, you don't have an American Express savings and checking account. You don't go to your local American Express.
They actually do have a
deposit
bank.
Your check.
They do have a bank. You can go. There's an American Express bank you can set up if you have an account.
I'm incredibly wrong then.
I think the bank part, I agree with you. The bank part is iffy. The credit card part is not iffy.
Well, and
according to the Wall Street Journal, it'll be a MasterCard. Cardholders will earn 2% cash back. That's a lot.
Mm-hmm. And
potentially more on, as you speculated, Rene, Apple gadgets and services.
Yeah. Will people get points towards meals? All right, go ahead.
What I'm confused about, though, is this going to be a Goldman Sachs credit card that has Apple benefits, or is this going to be an Apple credit card? Like, who's going to be in charge of my money?
Apple on it.
Is the key in the situation here,
Because I don't want a Goldman credit card, but I would love to have an Apple on my credit card.
Right, because to me, the way it's being described, it sounds like it's a Goldman Sachs credit card, and then you're going to get all these Apple features with it. Not that it's an Apple credit card. So,
I think it's
remember,
first step too.
Google already did this. I don't know if you remember this, and failed. Google had a credit card tied to your Google Wallet. I had one.
But I think Google's relationship with their users is different than Apple's.
Was that like the Apple Cash, or was that an actual credit card?
No, they had I think it was through Simple. I can't remember who did it, but Google had a credit card, and it would feed from your Google Wallet or into your Google Wallet. And they discontinued that program some years ago. Synchrony, I guess, ran it. So.
But it's everyone's absolutely right. There's so many opportunities to take a brand new approach. Just the idea of having burner credit card numbers is such an actually important thing these days. Whereas one of my banks makes it really incredibly difficult for me to even change my ATM PIN number, because it's basically, I don't know, all run on a DEC PDP-11 with punch tape or something. Whereas other banks
it into stone.
Right, exactly. Whereas there are other banks have services where, I really, really am interested in a newspapers.com subscription, but if I don't remember to cancel this after a month, I'll get hit with $400 for the entire year prepaid. I'm going to give them a burner credit card number so that I will get an email from them saying, hey, teensy problem. We tried to charge $400 to this credit card and it says this number no longer exists. And then I can actually make the rational decision, as opposed to, I guess I'm subscribing to premium for an entire year. But these are the sort of things. And like Rene said, the ability to simply say, I'm terribly irresponsible with my money, but if I had the ability to click a checkbox on my phone and simply say that every time I move money into my account in any way, shape, or form, 5% of it goes into a folder that is not attached to anything until I realize that my electric bill is due in a week, and I already bought my tickets to WWDC, and it's nice. Oh, great! I do have $480. I didn't know that I'd already saved. All these sort of stuff that will make banking more interactive and more. I don't know, just more beyond an electronic version of writing a check. Yeah.
It's more proactive. What you're talking about, which is a great idea, is this something that the finance apps that we have, like Mint, like you mentioned, and you need a budget. This will actually, if this were a feature that worked, you could actually set it up so that, for example, if you spent $500 on some computer-related thing, you could even get a notification that says, "Hey, you're about to spend more than your monthly budget on this gadget right here. Are you sure you want to do it?" And it's notifying you immediately because you just swiped the card, and then you can have just a second to stop yourself and go, "Do I really need this $500 computer gadget, or maybe I should hold off because I'm trying to save for something?" Like the proactive banking in that way sounds like such a great idea to be able to do that.
Interestingly, Apple Pay, at least, Apple doesn't break out Apple Pay as part of its overall services revenue, but analysts have tried to figure it out. This is a graph that was in the Wall Street Journal article from Loop Ventures, and the light blue is other services, the dark blue is Apple Pay, a tiny fraction of the revenue in services that didn't even show up until 2017 and has barely increased since then. I mean, I guess you could say it's doubled every year, but double nothing is nothing. So that surprises me. And one of the things the Journal speculates is this might be a way to get more people to use Apple Pay. Well, and we have to remember that watches were a little part of their revenue as well when they started. So a lot of this stuff takes some time to build up. But I do think that, and Apple is in a different position than the banks are because it sells a lot of things, and so having people have money coming in one side and then loaning it out the other side down the road could be a very virtuous cycle for Apple. And so I think that's Apple's got a lot of reasons to keep this all closed up. If you have a ton of cash, part of the problem with having, $200 billion sitting in the bank,
you got nothing to do with it.
Yeah, you got nothing to do with it. And do you invest it? Do you put it in CDs? I remember in the early days of Microsoft, they were making so much money hand over fist that Bill Gates would just keep opening certificates of deposit at bank after bank because they had all. And I remember reading about this, and their first
like
CFO comes in and he says, "Here's all our bank books. Figure this out." And I think it is a problem in corporate governance as you get really big and you have big cash. You got to know that cash could be a moneymaker.
You manage profit to zero like Amazon, and it's all fine.
Yeah. With no profit, no taxes, right?
That's definitely something. That's definitely something that isn't fully appreciated when you have these large tech companies that are famous for their phones or they're famous for their software. One of their biggest products that no one ever sees is the division of the company that's just concerned with investing their money in things that have nothing to do with manufacturing or the pipeline. It really, there's so much going on to make sure that the taps remain open, so to speak.
Well, there's other this is all speculative, we should point out, but there's another very big story that could conceivably change everything for Apple in the next year or two. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. And I guess we have to talk about Apple's folding phone. There isn't one. And what there
isn't one outside of Cupertino.
Well, or there isn't one. There isn't one that you can fold and then unfold, I guess.
I went to my hardware library. I went to my hardware library. I got out my iPhone 3G. I got out my original iPhone 2G. So put them together. You can put a strip of hinge between them. You have a 5G folding iPhone. I don't know. And I'll take $2,000 for it from anybody.
It's too bad you don't have two 3GSs. Then you could have 6G. Well, never mind.
Exactly.
Never mind. I'll stop right there.
No. You're thinking wrong. We get $30 million in grant money to research the feasibility.
There you go.
And then we show there are folding.
And then do nothing.
We figured it out. And we'll talk about that.
So I don't know how.
Hold on.
How I feel about the folding phone. Okay.
That's next. I'll let you lead it off, Lory. The folding phones in a minute. But first, a word from our sponsor at Atlassian, the IT company. They're really a software company that creates collaboration software, but software that powers IT teams all over the world. Staying competitive in this cloud-based world is tough. IT teams have to plan, they have to execute, and they have to do it faster and more accurately than ever. And because they're working with more and more complex applications, more and more complex, paths, network paths, incidents often require open, agile, and smart coordination between ops and dev teams. Collaboration is really a big deal. Expectations are high, stakes are high, and the IT team, that's at the center. You know Atlassian, I'm sure, because they're the company behind Jira. Jira, which brought Agile to so many enterprises. It's the best way to keep track of, and we use Jira here. We're absolutely an Atlassian house. The best way to keep track of who's responsible for what, who's working on what stage the project's in, and there's nothing more satisfying than moving that column in Jira all the way over to completed. But Jira is just the start. In fact, one of the things we do, it's so important, is documentation. We do that in Confluence, another Atlassian tool. Keeping track of where things are, your workflow, how it's going, and afterwards how you work with it is so important. Got a big code base. Bitbucket is fantastic. I see they have other tools too. They keep adding new and great features. That's what I love about Atlassian. It's not just for developers. Atlassian offers an affordable, reliable suite of tools for IT teams of all sizes, from DevOps to Agile, IT apps to Ops to ITSM, and whatever is next. They provide the technology backbone to help modern IT organizations plan, service, and support the kind of change that propels the business. Jira, Confluence, Bitbucket, that's the backbone of effective cross-team project planning. But then there's OpsGenie, too, and Status Page to help teams better detect incidents, coordinate response efforts to resolve issues faster, and keep customers or stakeholders up to date. All of that integrates seamlessly, and like all of Atlassian's tools, they're easy and free to try. So there's no reason not to try them all. Choose the tools that's right for your framework, and trusting that as you grow, they will grow with you. Atlassian.com/IT. Find out which Atlassian offering is right, or really combination of offerings is right for your team. Easy and free to try at Atlassian.com/IT. Try Atlassian today and see what IT can be for free. It's kind of the Dr. Seuss version of that commercial. Lory Gil. Now nobody was in Barcelona this weekend, right?
Not me.
We sent people.
We wish we were in Barcelona.
I've decided that I'm allergic to jet lag, so I can't fly into a different time zone.
Mobile World Congress, of course, going on. I think it's still going on in Barcelona. Maybe it's wrapped up. And it was an occasion for Samsung a week ago to kind of ahead of time in San Francisco announce the new Galaxy S10 phones. But also to reveal the Galaxy Fold, which won't be available till, I think, next month. You can pre-order it.
April 26th?
Oh, April. Okay, April 26th. That's the phone that folds out like a book. So it has
an Audi.
It's an Audi. There's also innies. That's the Huawei Mate X, which is a trifold. The screens are on the outs. It's very complicated. Now, we are starting to get some reports back from people like Vlad Zvov and Dieter Bohn at The Verge, Anand's Text folks who have tried these, and generally the reaction is surprisingly positive.
It's a really great idea. It's a great form factor. It's exciting to have that extra. I'm not making a joke here. The extra flexibility of having a pocketable phone that could also expand out into a more of a productivity device. And not only that, but just from a design point of view, the idea of all these people who have all these really weird designs on their computers at Apple and HTC and inside Google and everywhere say, well, what if we did have the ability to bend the display 180 degrees? What problems could we solve? I mean, a lot of people are making fun out of it. It's certainly going to be a weird. I don't want to become anywhere near the first generation of these devices. Also, Samsung is not really great at building the first generation of anything, and of course $2,000 for this thing, holy mother of God. But it's a truly exciting idea that I hope that there's a lot of follow through on, because this could be an explosive way of getting us off the seafloor of stagnation in phone space.
I couldn't read your eyes, Lory. Did you want one or not? It was very exciting to see this new technology come out. So, all of the tech world is sort of stagnating right now. There's not been really the next new completely different thing. And here's this new completely different thing. But I don't know. There's a couple of things. One, it's huge. And I don't mean like the screen folds out to big. I mean, it's thick. They're both very thick. Even the Huawei one, which is significantly thinner, it has this sort of
grip on the side that's larger. So they're kind of like making their version smaller by cramming everything into this little grip on the side, which still makes it kind of thick. And I just keep thinking about how the mobile phone, like cellular phones, they used to be really big. I mean, think about the car phone and how big the car phone was. And then we went super extra small and we started carrying around phones that were 3.5 inches. They were tiny little phones. And now we're moving back to larger and larger and larger. And it's getting to the point where mobile devices are not mobile anymore. You can't comfortably fit either of these folds in your back pocket. They're way too thick. They're way too long. I don't, but it was really cool to see these things in action, to see foldable screens in action. So, I don't know.
I just think that I just watch it getting bent and thinking, this is, I just don't know how it's going to last. I just have this thing like the first people who get this is going to be great for the first 3 or 4 months or 5 months, and then after that.
Well, also those screens are plastic because you can't bend Gorilla Glass yet, so they have very like pre iPhone era, pre Corning era plastic screens. In the Huawei case, it's going to be like, I'm super excited too. That crease, I'm never going to not see it until they figure out proper crease management. But these are real. But I love these early experimental stages. I don't like it when we've got an establishment that says this is the way a phone looks. I love it when crazy drunken Uncle Samsung is throwing something at the wall, and Huawei's billions of dollars are just like, party time. Let's see what we can make it a triangle. Who cares? It's 2 triangles. It unfolds into a trapezoid. I love this. It is so fresh and vibrant, and a lot of it is going to be so terrible. But I love going through that to see what comes out on the other side.
I want to work in the crease management division. I think we.
Yes. No, but Rene's absolutely right. That's what Samsung gets a lot. I make fun of Samsung for, hey, look, we've got the first 3D face scanner that somebody at the demo event was able to trick just by taking a selfie on his iPhone and holding up. But hey, it's still the first 3D face scanner. But they're the other company that said, wow, creating a huge 5-inch phone, that's the stupidest idea ever. But hey, we're in the manufacturing business. We've got like a dozen different models. Let's just do it. And then suddenly they've revitalized an entire industry. So right. I'm keen. I'm keen to see how it turns out. Everything that's being said here is absolutely true. I'm mostly about the plastic screen, about the little divot that they're trying to make sure you don't really see. And I'll be shocked if after a year of actual use, assuming that people are using it like a phone as opposed to using it as a party trick and otherwise keeping it in a drawer. I'm also really keen to see if there doesn't become a little or even a marked sort of like line of reduced contrast in the middle of that fold out screen. But
after
the idea of
so many times.
Yeah, absolutely. I also thought it was kind of weird that they it says, I can't wait for the first teardown of this, because if I were designing this device and I were Samsung, one of my priorities, as soon as they showed me the first the working prototype, I would say, oh, okay, but of course, when we build the real thing, the closed screen is going to be from the top. It's not going to be this sort of 2-inch chin and 2-inch forehead. Oh, no, sir. That's exactly what we're going to do.
Right? Okay. It has no headphone jack and it has a giant notch. 2 things you never thought you would see in any Samsung phone. But 5G is so onerous that there's nobody on earth who can fit those modems in nicely yet.
But Apple's influence is so broad that not only did have people seeing their hardware designs, but they also said, hey, that trick where Apple decided to make the default wallpaper for the phone a planet on a black background so no one could see the size of our notch? Let's do that so no one can see the big the big keyhole in our screen or the big notch on the corner of our folding screen.
The Galaxy Fold is like a pirate patch. It's like the entire right-hand side of the open display.
Yeah.
The pirate patch. That's the new.
Well, and then there's the price, and on Friday,
starting at $1980.
1980, and the Huawei Mate X is almost $3,000.
Come to the US, but the equivalent if you can smuggle one in.
Jeff Williams, COO of Apple, was speaking at Elon University on Friday, and one of the students asked him if Apple had any plans to reduce prices. He said, the stories that come out about the cost of our products have been the bane of my existence from the beginning of time, including our early days, Williams said. analysts don't really understand the cost of what we do and how much care we put into making our products.
Oh, boo-hoo.
He talked about how to make the Apple Watch's activity tracker, they built a lab with 40 nurses and 10,000 participants. But he did say it's something, the cost is something we're very aware of. We do not want to be an elitist company. We want to be an egalitarian company, and we've got a lot of work going on in developing markets. He must have breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the price for the Huawei Mate X.
Right? Is that it wasn't them was probably the big part.
Oh, I guess a $1,100 phone doesn't sound as expensive as it used to.
Looking pretty good to you now. Hey, folks, you can get 2 of those in Andy's new case.
And I'm not sure if Apple or if Samsung or Huawei are thinking, oh, this is too expensive, but we're going to do a prototype, or if it actually costs that much to make.
I mean, it's super expensive to make small yield. And so this is the thing. It's like that West Wing episode where Donna says, come on, these pills cost 25 cents. And Josh says, no, the second one cost 25 cents. The first one cost $2 billion.
Right.
And they have to amortize that cost over how many they think they're going to sell. And they're not going to sell 100 million of these like they would the Galaxy S10. So they have to figure out we're manufacturing costs this much. We're going to make this many. And that's, these are for the early adopter nerd, super rich people who they want to be part of the process, and they're willing to pay a surcharge to be part of the process of discovering what's next.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not worried about it not because I think that's a rational amount of money to spend on a phone, but because it's not as though, congratulations, we are the only manufacturer of phones, and we've suddenly decided that the minimum buy-in is going to be $1,980. It is a super high-end phone that does things that, for a good old 6 days, you could say no other phone in the world could do, but still, and at least in that side of the marketplace, if you want to buy an $80 phone, you can still buy an $80 brand new, quite capable phone. So it's one of those cases where you can say, you're right, that is way too much money. That's why you definitely shouldn't buy one of these if that's way too much money for you.
And in a lot of countries, people are paying 2x, for an iPhone. It's one of those things that as a status symbol, it's not that there's 10 people out there looking for a status signal. There's millions of people out there looking for a status
the nice thing
signal.
about a folding phone, there's no question you have the latest, greatest phone, right? I mean, it's so different.
You gotta flex with it, though, right? You gotta go, open my phone and tell you, here are the directions you wanted.
Let me show you.
Did you see my new video?
But then people do know, I mean, immediately they made such a big deal over the price that, oh, wow, this guy has $2,000 to spend on a phone.
Like Lory said, though, it's so thick. It's like THII.
Oh, that's not thick.
Yeah.
That's not THICCCCC. This is thick. This is the Energizer 18,000 milliamp hour phone. Dave Gershgorn of Quartz says it's not just thick, it's unusably thick. He said you can barely hold it in your hand.
It's unstealable.
Yeah,
I disagree with it. If you put that in a sock, that is incredibly useful as a bludgeon self-defense device.
Well, an Energizer, which is a battery company, let's face it, also says you can use it as a battery charger to charge your other devices.
If you look at
But you can do that with the new Samsung Galaxy.
It's probably not that much thinner than that thing. It's probably a little bit thicker.
But you have other stuff in there, Alex.
I have a lot of stuff.
I'm pretty sure it's a lot thicker than that, actually. Like, you look at that picture. That thing is really thick.
Yeah.
Remember that old cell phone ad where the guy told his friend it had theft protection and he threw it at his head? It's just like the perfect commercial.
I think there's definitely.
I don't think that thinness is everything. I think that if most phones were 1/3 thicker, they could be so much more useful, and not just because of battery life, but nonetheless, like as Lory said about the folding phone, like if it's thick enough that you can actually put your logo on the spine of the phone. Clearly, this is not this is not an aspirational design choice.
But I think that there are markets, and I think that
exactly.
in today's market, if you're not in that cool section that Samsung and Huawei and Apple kind of own in a lot of ways, and maybe a couple other manufacturers, you have to find the vertical that's going to make the most sense. So. If you're dealing with folks that want to use a phone that's way out into the middle, going into the middle of nowhere for a long period of time, and you don't know how often you'll be able to charge, I think that this thing could make a lot of sense. I think that it makes a lot of sense I could see this being a combat ready, phone, where you put it into cases, and that means that
put it in a sock.
You have guys that are that would make sense for. And so I think that there's a lot of.
Would it be more efficient to have like a smaller phone and then a portable battery, and then maybe even like that portable battery has some kind of attachment so that you can actually stick the phone right on the portable battery?
Yeah,
like
the issue is in a lot of those areas whether it's combat or whether it's you camping or whatever, it's a lot of dirt. There's a lot of other things going on, and having things break up into little pieces is not necessarily a feature that is aspirational. so having it all contained in one unit, I think you could have people that because even now with this phone, I mean, as with Andy, I'd love it to be a third, thicker and be able to actually last a day, because right now I feel like I'm constantly charging my phone.
Here's another shot from Vlad Savov on
that's a lot of battery.
That's
that's aggressive.
And I'm defending it. I would never buy it.
You want to balance two things. You have two conflicting demands, almost like security and convenience. You have longevity. You want the phone to have a battery that lasts as long as possible, but batteries are not RF transparent. Batteries are not good for thermals because they get very hot, and also they're heavy. They're very heavy components. And you also want someone who's going to the doctor's appointment, wants to read their book, play their video game, watch their video, whatever, waiting at the airport for hours. And it's everyone says, yeah, you're not strong enough to hold up a phone, but you're holding it up for hours. It starts to get heavier, and so you want to sort of find the sweet spot where an average person can hold it up for a useful amount of time, because no matter how much charge you have in it, if you get tired of holding it, and you want to have it last, because it doesn't matter if you can hold it if it runs out of battery and you can no longer use it. And finding that sweet spot, I think we have gone too far in one direction, but finding that sweet spot is where I think a lot of these phones have to hit.
This thing is
let's also not ignore that if you made in addition to battery life, if you made a phone thicker, and one of the payoffs was we don't have to glue everything together, we don't have to make all these compromises about repairability. We're not going to make it out of Lego bricks, but nonetheless, it will be relatively easy to replace a cracked screen. It'll be trivial to replace a battery, and even if we decide that we want to swap out a motherboard to just the next generation version of this same platform, it might be possible. All these things could be done if you decide that. If you decide that you don't have to make this thing as thin as possible.
It does kind of look like
them like cards.
A modern bezel-less Android phone glued onto a giant battery.
Yeah,
onto 18 other modern bezel.
And I think again, like there are
it's like extruded.
When you think past the things that I just said there, but if you're working in events where you're up, you're really pushing things hard all the time, or you're working in construction, you're working in all kinds of areas where you're not going to necessarily have time to set it down, and being able to not just have long ready time, but have it be actively pushed as far as it can go all day without having to worry about it. I think it makes sense for
again as part.
Sorry, Andy.
No, I was just quickly saying, as part of a large ecosystem of phones, where again, if this is this is ridiculously thick and ridiculously heavy for you, you're right. Wow, you absolutely should not buy this. You should buy any of 100 other phones you can buy in this space. This is why, like, if sometimes it seems as though I and other people are saying, oh, Apple, they're just not into innovating anymore. They're going to wait for other people to innovate and then copy them. It's because Apple is not in a position where they can stop making a somewhat conservative device, because that's the only $800 phone that runs iOS. And if they do something crazy with it that is going to alienate 20% of their users, they've got no place to go but elsewhere.
Like give it a horrible keyboard. That's why I use the
thank you.
The battery
God
case.
Bless you for making me not say that.
Andy, I saw your tweet. You're on the edge, buddy. You're on the edge.
The cutting edge, man. The leading edge.
Andy tweets, what did you tweet? If Apple doesn't fix his keyboard, I'm going to buy my next laptop's going to be a ThinkPad.
Someone asked me on Twitter. Someone asked me on Twitter about, well, what's the alternative? And I need to make the point. The alternative to this MacBook is any other laptop by any other manufacturer. And hopefully it wasn't snarky or aggressive. I was saying in my case that I cannot buy a MacBook Pro, any 2016 or later model, is simply inadequate to my needs. It's not an ego thing. It's not a statement thing. It's just not going to do the job that I need a laptop to do. And so if this 2015 MacBook Pro of mine that I love is, for most definitions of the word love, should die on me, I'm buying a ThinkPad or I'm buying a Chromebook. There is just no way I'm buying a MacBook unless Apple decides to not just simply continue to fix this with the 26. I'm sorry, I should wind this down. But the problems I've been seeing with the 2016 model is that they put square wheels on something, and which made it terrible. And then rather than saying, wow, this was a terrible idea, let's go back to round wheels, they said, no, if we just increase the size of the wheel wells so it no longer scrapes, okay, we made bigger wheel wells, but it's still like very, very bumpy. Okay, but we'll beef up the suspension. Okay, now you've beefed up the suspension, but now it's hard for people to climb into it. Well, if we create this new electronic ladder system, or you could just switch back to something that worked before. So all I was saying last night was that I can't buy a new MacBook because it's just not going to do the job I need a laptop to do.
Show the tweet, if you would. I'm trying to signal to Carson. He's not hearing me.
Yeah.
If Apple sticks to this MacBook design, then when my 2015 MacBook Pro dies, I'm replacing it with a ThinkPad or Chromebook. Ooh, that's an interesting one. Andy, we're going to have to create a new role for you, the anti-editor or something, if you do that.
Oh, no. Oh, God. You already got one Dvorak, and he does such a good job with that I don't
That's
need
his
to
old title in
territory.
was it Macworld or Mac
Yes.
User? I think at the back of Mac User.
The curmudgeon. I think they're curmudgeon or something.
Anti-editor.
I find that I'm now typing almost.
I fight on the side of the angels.
So
that's all I'm saying.
Like the keyboard on the new Macs don't bother me because almost all my long form is now being typed on my iPad. The only thing I go back to my laptop for now is the high tech, like using Cinema 4D or using OmniGraffle, which is available on the iPad. Yep. But here's the problem with drawing packages. I had to really think through this. Like, why can I not use a drawing package on my iPad? Number one is I can't see my cursor under my finger. And number two is your movement is 1-to-1. So as you move your finger a little bit, and with your mouse, it's magnified, right? You can be much more precise. And so being able to be precise is something that is still a challenge on an iPad. But I find now that, and what I like about the iPad, I was thinking about it, is while I'm just using an Apple iPad, I can, or a case or whatever, you can get other cases with other keyboards. and so it's not, I think that we're kind of, I feel like I'm almost post laptop. And where I feel like I'm going to end up using my desktop for most of my heavy work. And then I use my iPad and my laptop now. I open it up and I realize it hasn't checked the mail in like 7 days.
So why can't we just get one device that's an iPhone that you fold it out once and it's an iPad, and then you fold it out again and it's a MacBook, or you can flatten it down in front of a cinema display and it's your touch interface for Final Cut.
Call it the origami. That is going to be our next topic, really, which is the future of Apple. But before we leave this folding phone topic, is there any consequence to Apple to just sitting back and watch this unfold?
I mean, like with smartphones for 10 years or tablet PCs for 10 years or watches for 5 years.
They're making a foldable phone right now. They're doing it.
I'm sure that they're experimenting with it.
They're working
They've
on it.
had prototypes since iPhone 4S period of time. I mean, they've been doing it for years.
I think they're quite happy to see what works and doesn't work. I mean, that's what Apple does, is they just kind of draft on everybody and watch what is working, not working, and then just step in with a solution that they think is a better one.
Yeah, I think Rene had a good tweet on this topic, which I can't remember, but I'm sure you will.
I think it's in the...
Rene, here it is.
No, it's, yeah.
Is this it? Apple has historically done the opposite. They culturally would rather eat themselves and have someone else do it. I don't know.
That's because some people were saying Apple would never do a foldable phone because it would cannibalize iPad. No, that's not how Apple run. Apple destroyed the iPod with the iPhone.
That's right.
That's
as part of a longer thread about this topic. Yeah.
Rene's earlier tweet was very much on point, saying for people who are, again, rolling their eyes and saying, "Oh, Apple, they never innovate anymore," and Apple saying, "Yeah, just like there's 10 years of smartwatches before Apple did the Apple Watch. There were 10 years of tablets before Apple did the iPhone. There were 10 years of phones." And if I were argumentative, I could nitpick about a couple of details, but that's really overall a very, very good point. They're really not in the business of proving how hot they are bringing a brand new thing to market. There is, I think I replied to someone else's reply about this by saying that with Apple, there's so much about is this new thing a fad or is it really important? The second thing is there something that Apple feels as though they can really bring to this as opposed to just participating in this new wave of thing? And then thirdly, is this, from a consumer point of view, is it something they're legitimately interested in, like a wearable watch? Or is it something like a smart speaker where they're just sort of content to let their design and let the logo sort of carry the day, as opposed to really, really being completely obsessed with doing a great job about this? Well, I'm not worried.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
I think that one of the things that Apple does better than most companies, and this is why they can kind of draft, is they're much better at solution-based engineering. So a lot of engineering gets into this idea of they get caught up in the technology. Like, we do it because we can do it. And I think Apple does a better job at
doing we must picture. Because we can.
Sorry?
Sorry. I automatically did a Portal joke. We do what we must. Because Aperture Science, we do what we must because we can.
Yeah, and so I think that a lot of times we work with teams, and a lot of times you see people just go into this. They're into the technology because of the technology, and they keep on putting up new little things that are really cool, but they're not thinking of the big picture of how does this actually make sense? How does it how does it actually serve the real solution and make it actually easier for a human being to do something? And I think that that's one of the things that Apple tends to do better. They don't hit it all right all the time, but they tend to do it better than most.
Yeah, that said, it would be nice to see them do like something like when I think about all the things I consider to be great computers and computing platforms, the list always includes the Raspberry Pi, and it actually always includes the Amazon Kindle, things that we had no idea how much we needed this thing until this thing existed. Because sometimes you really just have to say, we think that there's a market for this. We won't know until we put it on the market, but this is such an interesting idea that we're going to go ahead with it. That's not something that, again, it's something that Apple isn't necessarily free to do because of how their business is run. But you have to also acknowledge when someone has said, wow, I would have never said that a notebook computer that is essentially just a web browser, or a computer that where the number one design imperative was, there's no way we can sell this, not make this, but sell this for more than $34, and think that this is one of the most important and transformative and wonderful computers ever made. This is why it's exciting to be writing about technology when some people do decide that, no, we're not going to evolve, we're not going to create a better version of the netbook. We're going to create something that takes the good ideas from this and leaves the other ideas behind. Or when we realize that, wow, there has been this Raspberry Pi shaped hole in computing for at least the last 6 years, and it's time that somebody like us comes along and spackles it with something like a Raspberry Pi.
When I look at how many things we use Arduino and Raspberry Pis for to glue our world together, it's the one reason that I probably would not. Right now I'm getting ready to really push my kids through the kind of Swift training, but the one reason they won't learn only Swift is because they need to be able to program an Arduino, because you can't do you can't make things without at least an Arduino.
Fourth. There's the language.
Fourth.
Yep. Fourth. They need to all learn fourth.
In my day, it was logo.
So another boat Apple might have missed, the HoloLens. This week, Microsoft also on Sunday showed off its second generation HoloLens. Remember, Apple is all in on augmented reality, but as yet has no product. Microsoft's already iterating on a product they introduced 4 years ago.
Consumer product that they're selling hundreds of millions of a year, and I can't believe Apple missed that market.
Yeah, no, it's not. You're being facetious, of course. Yeah. In fact, they completely dropped, for the most part, any attention to the consumer market. At the very end, the creator of Fortnite, Tim Sweeney, stepped on stage for what seemed like 30 seconds to say, yeah, this will be great for games too. Bye.
He should have dropped out of a Fortnite bus.
Yeah, but it really was. It was all about enterprise. It was all about Azure, the cloud, Microsoft's cloud. It was all about how people could use it to teleconference, to design buildings.
I'm super happy that there's companies who are willing to do all this in public. They beta in public, they test in public. They unabashedly do it. They let you have early access to hardware because they want to see you figuring it out. And Apple is just not that company. They keep their shame internal. They beta internal. They've got all sorts of glasses flying around Sunnyvale, but none of us have ever seen them. And once they watch how everyone reacts to all the Google glasses and the Microsoft stuff, and they think they have a product that they can actually sell that our parents, our kids will be able to pick up and use, then they'll bring it to market. But they're not late. There's no market yet.
And the AR stuff that they are doing is prepping for all of this. There's so many problems with AR right now. Being able to track objects. We haven't even gotten to what I would true location-based process.
I would disagree. I think that there is an advantage, and it's kind of long-standing tradition in the startup community that you get a product out, a minimum viable product out to real users as early as possible, because until you get it to users, you don't really know what the real issues are. Internal testing is not enough.
But Microsoft's doing a lot of the work for them. But
Microsoft's getting all the data. They're not.
They're getting a lot of data, but if you get one of them and you start, here's what happens.
You can look at it, you can play with it, but I don't know if
you look at Animoji, Leo, Animoji are really dumb. They're really dumb, but they're getting entire generations of people to sit there and scan their face and see it in an augmented reality world without being thrown into it, terrified, confused. It's like, ho, 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 look, I can be a pig. Ho, 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 look, I can create my avatar. And then they've got an Animoji avatar. They're in an AR world. And you see all the games that are on the Apple's just beta testing it through existing hardware. And yeah, there is a lot of loss to that, but there's also a lot of user education going on there. And it's a different methodology. Both have their pros and cons, but Apple they won't sell like 30,000 units to an enterprise. It's just not how they're culturally built.
Recently, Frank Casanova was appointed a senior director of worldwide product marketing for augmented reality. Yeah. Casanova has been at Apple since longer than Steve Jobs, I feel like. Is really...
He's probably got a very low-digit employee number.
Yeah, that's a really interesting play there. But I honestly think that there is some value to getting it out there. And here's where I would say there's proof is in the pudding. Magic Leap, which for so long, maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 years, was developing in secrecy in private. They finally released a developer version last year, and it was a big dud compared to what
Apple Watch was like a year too early. Like maybe they could have spent an extra year on it to figure it out.
I think there's value to getting it out there. I really do.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And Apple Watch is actually a great example where it's such a
dud for 4 years.
Well, yeah, but not anymore. The thing is, people in our industry are very quick to say, "Oh, look, Google glasses. Look how horrible they. Oh God, I don't want to be a bleep hole. You're in Google Glass." But the thing is, you're absolutely right. You do have to put it out there to figure out how people. You can't just rehearse a play endlessly and say that you're actually developing it. At some point, you have to bring in a live audience and see how they react to this without hearing the whole story behind what your concept was. And the Apple Watch is a great example where it's such a classic Apple product where they got the hardware 100% correct, because that's the one thing that you can't change in 3 weeks' time with a system update. You can't send molecules but over Wi-Fi, but you can send a new interface. You can send new software, and they really did take a couple of years of watching people use these things to realize that, wow, that idea of an Apple Watch user opening a garage door with their watch and watching live video of the garage door opening and their kids coming in, that was such a dumb idea. But this idea of being the hub of a fitness related sort of set of features and apps, that's absolutely where everybody wants this to be. And they would never have learned that if they had simply decided, here it is, and we're not changing it. You need to get it out there and figure it out.
Right. There's some key technologies that we'll probably see this year or next year that are still required for the glasses to work. As someone who owned Google Glass and has used HoloLens and has developed all that stuff, is that one of the big things is actually understanding where you are, and I mean down to the millimeter of exactly where you are, opens up this whole world that right now we're slowly creeping towards. So the persistence and those types of things are hints towards a path that we're not quite along, and so it's not worth releasing any hardware until that's fixed.
I disagree. I mean, what if Apple had said, we're not going to release a personal computer until we can make an iPad? They would never have gotten to the iPad.
They would have also
they didn't
skipped over
really
the
say.
entire centrist line, so that would have been okay.
They could have skipped that one. I agree.
Yeah.
Oh, the Performa.
But I would say that Apple. Alex is right in that the hardware for AR just isn't there yet. It's there in a form. It's only there if you can afford to have a specific use case for it and spend thousands of dollars per unit, which is why Microsoft and Google are going towards enterprise as opposed to a consumer angle right now. However, I would say that Google and Apple, they're shipping more and more of the software of their wearable device that we're not an AR device that we're not going to see for another 2 or 3 years, but as we get as the voice assistants become more and more sophisticated, that's how we're going to be talking to our glasses. We're going to be saying, "Hey, glasses, remember this phone number that I'm looking at right now." And guess what? We already have on certain phones the ability to hold up a camera and say, "Copy anything that's interesting from this photo and put it into my address book." And we're getting augmented reality maps, and we're getting all these other smart features and the ability to simply save on iOS, the ability to save a whole bunch of complicated workflows as a simple spoken command. So we are really, really absolutely seeing all this software. We just don't have the hardware to do it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe the issue is that it's farther off than we think. One of the things Microsoft did do is bring an iPad on stage with the HoloLens and showed that, well, one of the employees, say, designing an engine or repairing an engine can be wearing HoloLens, that $3,500 product. Of course, you can rent it for $125 per user per month. So it is relatively affordable. But the other ones who don't have a HoloLens can use, because it works with ARKit and ARCore, Google's solution, can use an iPad and see the same thing. They just have to hold their iPad up,
I dangle the phone from the hat, and then it moves a little bit, but really it gives you hand training.
And really maybe the reason Apple hasn't put one out is because we're, as you, I guess, are really saying, Alex, we're too far away from a minimum viable product.
They're not putting
that yet.
They're not putting the hardware out, but they are putting the software out right now.
But I don't think you learn as much from how people use Memojis.
No, not Memojis. The AR games, the AR stuff. Now, what I do think they need to do is spend more.
Do you ever see anybody using those? Do your kids use them?
No, I don't even use them.
Nobody
because it's not there yet. And so there's a bunch of the technologies that
they're not learning much.
Well, those technology, you're not going to. The problem is you're going to give away your industrial design. You're going to give away, how you're approaching that, and you're not going to get any return for it until those other technologies are developed.
That's Apple's thinking. They're very secretive,
right? Well, but
what you get for it is real world experience. You do get something for it.
I think what we're going to find is that when they actually put it out, once all those technologies are working, then it's it's a magical experience. Where it's not going to be right now. It would be not.
The first iPad had a spinning hard drive in it. The first iPod didn't have solid state memory,
but it's still they had the
and you could have made the case you can't make a good MP3 player unless you have solid state memory, but they made it.
Well,
I guess the opposite case.
There is a lot of registration issues and all kinds of issues with AR right now that are what all the best, even the best are AR, even the HoloLens. I mean, there's just a lot of problems with it at the moment that it is not a magical experience. There are moments of greatness where if you have vision, you can see it. Like because I work on this a lot. So there's moments where you're working on AR and VR and you go, oh my goodness, this will change the world. And then it breaks, and all of them break right now. And so what you're going to end up with is just a bunch of people frustrated, that it isn't working, and you're going to get a bunch of complaints, and that's the reason the reason that Microsoft and Google pay attention to industrials, because those guys are willing to deal with it. They're like, it doesn't work all the time.
Apple doesn't want anybody saying, oh, that's not that Apple product is not up.
And they don't do industrial only, like they do consumer products, and you can put up with things that you can put up with the whole scene sliding a little bit, or something not registering, or all these other bits and pieces. You're willing to put up with that as an industrial user and not necessarily as a consumer.
Also, you're in a very, very good marketing position when the people you're selling it to can tell the end user, use this or you're fired.
Right.
Yeah, you have to use it no matter.
But there's going to be, when we think about the AR, it's going to be very exciting. When you think about training people, like some of the stuff we have played with a little bit is imagine being able to, when you think about that engine, being able to, you're disassembling an engine and the little arrow, take this out next.
Yeah, that's what they demonstrate.
And you unscrew it and take this out next to do this.
That's what they demonstrate, which is pretty amazing.
Like how to use an object and whatever it is, whatever the tool is, you turn this little dial and then you do this thing. Yeah. And the ability to learn that is, it's going to be transformational. It's just not there yet.
Is it ever going to be consumer facing though? What you're talking about sounds more like educational, training, industrial. How is this applicable to just me sitting around in my house? And I think maybe that's where we're not seeing Apple kind of like digging into the hardware part of that market, is that like maybe this is never going to be a consumer facing industry.
If you imagine cooking, like teaching you how to cook, like you could be sitting there cooking with things that are popping up. You could, when you're fixing something in your house. But we should also remember that the K through 12 market is a $600 billion market. I mean, that's the total
Apple does
money
have
we spend
a lot
on it.
invested in education. So yeah, definitely.
So $600 billion and that's just K through 12. It's a $1 trillion market if you get into the wider market. So it's nothing to, education is nothing to ignore.
All right, let's take a break, and then we're going to come back and talk about the 2021 Macs and how they're going to be very different. Very different. Our show today brought to you by Sophos. We are protected by an invisible shield all around the Twit studios, powered by Sophos cybersecurity. Sophos is really awesome. Anybody in enterprise is well aware of Sophos. And many of you are aware of Sophos because for years we've recommended Sophos' online scan at sophos.com to check for viruses and so forth. Sophos, though, has also something really interesting. They are using now deep learning, a very advanced AI technology, deep learning, to fight bad guys. It's always been a seesaw battle between hackers and defenders. Hackers come up with a new technique. Defenders find a way to fight it, and back and forth. But the problem is the hackers are fast, and there's a lot of them. And there are a lot of 0 days out there, and it gets harder and harder for security software to detect these viruses. That's why deep learning is so important. It works like your brain with a neural network. It interprets data and can respond to threats it's never seen before with blazing speed. SE Labs just ranked Sophos #1 in an independent security test with the best protection ratings across the board for both large enterprises and small businesses. So it's a very successful technique used in enterprise, and now they are making a home version. I wanted to tell you about it. It's called Sophos Home for Macs and PCs. It delivers real-time protection from the latest ransomware attacks, malicious software hacking attempts, and more. Plus, it's very easy to use. And what I really like about it is it's web-based. It's a web-based console. So you can use it to secure a single machine or manage the security of multiple devices, not just in your home, but around the world. One account protects all the Macs and PCs in your home from a single console. You can even use it to keep relatives secure, even if they're thousands of miles away. You can remotely manage their security, clean up threats, keep their systems safe. This is real-time protection that's smarter than any antivirus. You know that, you probably do, that Sophos' tagline is security made simple, and they've certainly done that with Sophos Home. Very easy to use. You don't have to be an enterprise IT expert. You log in from your browser. You start securing your systems today. So, bottom line, whether you're a big enterprise like us, well, we're not big, but we're business using Sophos, or a home user, Sophos has you covered. Some of the largest businesses in the world use Sophos to stay protected from those ransomware attacks last year. Some didn't. Those are the ones that lost a lot of money on ransomware. Third-party reviewers consistently rank Sophos among the best cybersecurity providers. I refer to them in their Sophos blog all the time. It's actually one of the places I go to keep up on security news. And Sophos now has a product that is remarkable. I want you to check it out, sophos.com. You can get a free trial there at sophos.com. You can also use the security scan anytime you want. That's free too. Sophos.com. We thank them for their support.
Leo, I don't know if this is going to cause continuity problems, but over the course of the previous 2 ads, I did shave.
That's very confusing.
I felt, yeah, exactly. I just felt like such a bum looking at myself.
Now
in my
I have to do the whole show again. People are going to say, "Wait a minute,
is it a different day? What happened?
What happened?"
I understand the pressure.
You shouldn't have told anybody, Andy. It would have been a whole conspiracy theory.
The one time I shave is on Tuesdays, because I remember back on Screensavers there was a moment where Leo said something about Patrick not shaving for shows in kind of so in my head it's always like, I should shave.
You should always shave.
So I don't always shave, but I do shave for when I shave. It's for Mac.
It's just.
I don't always shave, but when I do, it's for Mac.
We're an HD stream, and I've got really good lighting, and unfortunately, I'm at least 20 years past the date when men who don't shave look dashing and rugged. And
I'm watching MSNBC yesterday, and Ari Melber comes on, and I swear to God, he does not shave before the show. He's like those baseball players who are going to shave after the game,
right?
And it's disconcerting. Maybe that's the new look, but it's not long enough to be a grizzle,
right?
It just looks like you haven't shaved.
If there's a millennium word for it, then it's official.
Yeah, it probably
if they haven't made their own word for it yet, then there's not.
He's a hipster. He's probably got something going on. I don't know. Apple has, according to rumors. This comes from a pretty good source. So this guy named Mark Gurman, anybody heard of him? This is in Bloomberg, plans on combining iPhone, iPad, and Mac apps by 2021. Now, we're well aware of, what's it called, Marzipan?
This is Marzipan.
But so this is not new, but I thought, maybe I just misunderstood it, Marzipan was going to make it so you could cross-compile. And in fact, they are encouraging people to do that. So if you're an iOS app developer, now you can use Marzipan to make a Mac version. But that's not.
So Marzipan is UIKit on the Mac. That's all it really is. It's moving the UIKit frameworks into a place where they can run UIKit apps on the Mac using all the Mac affordances like mice and menu bars and keyboards and those sorts of things. And the first stage was Apple putting out those really terrible notes and voice recorder, horrible apps. Yeah. I think they know they're terrible, so they're fully aware of that. Stage 2 is this year at WWDC, where Apple puts out the SDK for third-party developers, which means that Netflix and Twitter can easily make their iPad apps available on the Mac. People, Marco Arment can make Overcast. Greg Pierce can make drafts much more easily for the Mac rather than having to go through and make an AppKit app. They can bring over a lot more of their logic and on their data models, all those sorts of things to the Mac. Stage 3 is bringing iPhone apps that don't already have iPad versions of the interface, because you can already make iPhone and iPad universal binaries, but not all iPhone apps have iPad apps. So they're not quite as traditional looking as Mac apps, and maybe they'll run as like little widget windows, which will make a ton of people super happy for a while. But the idea is if you just have an iPhone app, it'll be super easy to bring that over and make it a Mac app. And then this will all wrap up in two things. One is a unified iOS store where you can just go in and buy an app, and it will give you the iPhone version, the iPad version, and or the Mac version, depending on which devices you have. And a unified binary system that, just like we have iPhone and iPad apps today, will be able to deliver iPhone, iPad, and Mac apps. Optionally, you can still build AppKit apps if you want to, but if you are sort of a developer, because there's so many more UIKit developers than there are AppKit developers, and there's so many more developers in the iOS ecosystem than there ever was in the Mac developer system, and Apple wants to sort of harness them and make it as easy as possible for them to bring their apps and their technology to the Mac. So sort of this multi-year project to get that in, to get all of Apple's developers onto all of Apple's platforms.
So it's more like the old universal binaries when we went from PowerPC to Intel, where you would have one blob, and depending what it was running on, it would run one way or the other. It's not
with different UI conventions though that have to be factored into,
it's
because
not
one is multi-touch and one is
I was kind of got the impression that ultimately Apple's headed towards a single unified, not even universal, but unified binary that runs everywhere. That's not going to happen.
You will have the option of you will have the option of making that if you are an iOS developer. If you are a staunch Mac developer, you can totally stay on AppKit. We'll see what happens when they go to ARM.
They won't deprecate. You don't think they'll deprecate AppKit?
When they go to ARM, like 5 years after ARM, who knows? Because iOS is ARM native, and macOS has been resilient. Leo, it's moved from PowerPC to Intel. It could probably,
and it's very likely running on ARM in Cupertino right now, right?
For years, secret third life.
Right.
Yeah, I hope it doesn't work like universal binaries used to work, where you're not even aware. The whole point of universal binaries is that you could remain completely unaware what kind of CPU you had in that box underneath your desk. If it would be such a terrible, in a lack of taking advantage of an opportunity, if Apple simply said that, hey, iOS developers, you know how desktop operating systems are kind of dying? Now you can actually make money off of these people in the last years before they move to the chosen operating system of iOS, and you can create a not terribly well thought out or ambitious Mac app that nonetheless will work exactly like an iOS app. I really hope that's not what's going to happen when there's an opportunity to say we can create a real next generation desktop operating system or desktop interface. I still love my Macs, but I have to acknowledge as a 4 operating system household between Chrome OS, Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, I have to say that the Mac is definitely the most long in the tooth interface I use of the 4 of them. There's just not a whole lot of there are a lot of 2005, 2006 ideas. There are not many 2015, 2016 ideas in it. And so I hope that this isn't just a way of transitioning Mac users, consumer as opposed to pro Mac users into an iOS product. I hope this is a way to bring macOS into a new state of relevancy for 2018 and beyond.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. I think Mac apps especially have really suffered in the consumer sense that they were fragmented before. It was hard to find good Mac apps. You had to just kind of have good word of mouth, and then you had the Mac App Store, which has just continually failed, even since its renovation, its design change, which is incredible. It's still not generating kind of the excitement that the iOS version does. And to be able to kind of bring together iOS app developers and macOS app developers so that they can kind of cross-platform their content without having to develop for separate platforms, separate operating systems, I think would be a huge benefit to iOS developers. They could bring their amazing content to the Mac so that we could use their content on the Mac without it being a difficult thing for them to get through.
Well, and the iOS market keeps on getting bigger, and the Mac market is going to continue to get smaller. So it does make sense to keep people developing across those platforms. I think that in the professional area, I could imagine things not, like the big 3D apps, those types of things could stay on the Mac for a while. And I think that we may see Mac Pros, for instance, stay on Intel probably a little bit longer than some of the smaller computers that move to ARM. So, I think that this transition will probably still take another 10 years. But I think eventually we're going to end up with a unified platform.
Well, once we're all on the same chip architecture,
right,
which is ARM, it's got ARM-ish. It's
right.
Apple's AX architecture.
Right.
ARM.
It makes sense to have a unified interface. It also responds to people who say, well, why doesn't macOS have touch by now? Every other major operating system does. It also helps iPad because right now we've got amazing hardware with our iPad Pros and software that really is stuck in an earlier era. iOS is a little behind on that.
I find myself caught between.
It.
No, but I find myself caught between. It's like if the iPad had a mouse, I would only use iOS. If the Mac had touchscreen, I'd probably only use Mac.
Right.
I feel like I'm like
what you want is something combined, right?
I just want a mouse because the problem is I can't. I've kind of gotten it down to.
But you want more than a mouse. You want better software too. There are limitations in iOS software.
But I believe that a lot of those limitations in the iOS software is because the interface. You just can't do with your fingers what you can do with a mouse.
Right.
And that is there's a fundamental limitation by saying I can't have a precise.
It doesn't make
selection.
sense in this day and age to have a mouse only or touch only.
Yeah, I agree.
Environment. You need both.
And when you use a Surface, you go, oh, this is the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah. No, I love my Surface.
Yeah, I love the Surface too.
Apple totally missed the boat. Without macOS is still a wonderful platform. iOS is still a wonderful platform, but it becomes more clear year after year that there is such a beautiful case to be made for having a desktop operating system or a laptop that has a touchscreen with it. And that gets back to what we were all talking about just 20 minutes ago, that sometimes you really do have to ship the thing and see how people are interacting with it, even if it doesn't make total sense, because after 2 or 3 years of seeing how people were interacting with touchscreen based Windows machines, they were able to develop an optimized version of the operating system and Chrome OS, which is the ability to have a really nicely fine-tuned convertible piece of hardware, Microsoft Surface tablets, which still have most of the things that make me feel like I'm covered with ants when it comes to using Windows. But still, you can't say that is a $1,000 computer that can be very, very good at everything it does. It doesn't fit that bill. So I mean, Alex is perfectly right. If I could buy a MacBook Air with a touchscreen, or if I could buy a MacBook Pro that has, let's say, a hard dockable keyboard on it and a trackpad, wow, I would be very. It would definitely keep me from tweeting about how it's possible that I will not be a portable Mac owner in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, Steven Sinofsky, famously, who ran Office and Windows, had a really good tweet storm on this yesterday because he was in charge of managing the project of making the original. I think it was started in Windows 7 and went into Windows 8 of making it touch friendly. And he was talking about it in an Apple context. You know, like I want a touchscreen at Mac too, but just saying touchscreen Mac, even just putting a touchscreen in there doesn't mean that the operating system is going to work. And what it really entails, and I think he said it was 3 years of like crossing the desert to get to the other side. And could Apple do that? And what would happen to iPad and iOS development? What would happen to the Mac in that time? And what would they have in the end? Because according to him, as much as everybody loves this stuff, very few people use it for very, very few things. Yet it requires an enormous amount of resources and investment from the company. And he goes through 4 different strategies of what Apple could do, like do something completely new, just rip and replace it, add this into an abstraction layer, do an emulation layer, because you already have simulated iOS apps on the Mac, and they're increasingly adding pointer features to iOS probably because of the Marzipan project. So all this stuff, like it's super easy to say we want this stuff, but when you look at Apple, Google never had the traditional operating system. They didn't have to port anything to the future. Microsoft never had a successful mobile operating system. All they could do was port traditional to the future. Apple has both, and that's a huge advantage, but it has a huge opportunity cost.
I think we get back to, again, Apple's biggest handicap as a company, which is that as the lone maker of Macs, they don't have the option of alienating so many of their people with such a radical swerve in one way or the other. Whereas, again, you can make an absolutely screwy Windows notebook that 5% of the market is absolutely gaga over, but everybody else is agog against. And then eventually that 5% becomes 10, becomes 20, becomes the majority. And now you've got 8 years invested in this technology. It's a fully mature platform. Whereas Apple, when you see how hard certain people who don't like certain hardware changes, I won't name any names, like me, how we react when we regard something as a failure and you don't have an option of doing anything else.
Yeah, you don't blame Microsoft when somebody makes a crappy laptop computer. You blame the manufacturer that made the crappy laptop. But in Apple's case, when Apple's crappy, they get the blame because they're the only ones doing it. Yeah, and if you're only making a limited number of certain models of things, then that's what we all have to do. There could be, another category of touch screen Mac, but then Apple is like fragmenting itself again. And then, the tech industry goes hubbub over whether or not, Apple is eating it, cannibalizing itself by creating a touchscreen desktop or a touchscreen computer. There's so much more to it. And Andy, everything you're saying is so true that if you give the software to somebody else and let them make the mistakes, then there's lots and lots of times when you can make the mistake and then sometimes get it right and then have this really great hardware then that's what grows. But in Apple's case, they don't have that. They don't have the luxury of doing something like that.
One of the rumors is that the next MacBook, the really thin and light Mac, will be ARM-based, and that'll be next year.
Yeah.
Credible?
That's a perfect choice. That's a perfect choice.
Yeah, because it's not a high-power machine to begin with.
A $1,000 device that's mostly for email, Facebook, writing, and let's be honest, Google Docs, and the ability to do it on ARM. That is a perfect test bed for the entire idea of having ARM-based Macs. Those people are going to teach Apple over 2 or 3 years so much about what they need to do and to scale this up so that some of the MacBook Pro market, for instance, could get their work done on an ARM-based Mac.
You had me until Google Docs, and my battery life just halved, Andy. Just halved.
I've used a number of ARM-based Windows machines, and they're sluggish and unusable. But remember, that's the Qualcomm 8 in most cases 835 chip, which is 2 generations old now.
I think the small laptop is the perfect first step. Like it is, it totally makes sense for Apple to do that.
And I think Apple, because they do their own silicon, can make, and this will be very interesting, can make it a nicely responsive. It doesn't have to be.
Well, the operating system would also be tuned for that.
Right.
For that silicon, they'll make them together. Right. And they've got a lot of experience building for ARM.
Yeah.
Not only that, but imagine an Apple TV-sized box that runs essentially a $500 black box version of that ARM-based MacBook Nothing. So imagine being able to finally get Macs back in schools again, because you can finally give them a desktop experience that really makes sense for them financially, and they would also have all the opportunities of the safety and security and the stability of Mac.
So who's going to be the
Mac
first?
Mini that runs ARM as
Who's
like a
the first to
prototype
buy
desktop?
an ARM-based Mac? It'll be me, I think.
Of course,
I'll
all of us, Leo. If we have enough money left over from our foldables, we'll buy all the ARMables.
Those are really, foldables are kind of going into their ARM, and they're
my
going into that
$2,000 phone and my $500 laptop. It's going to be an amazing world.
Oh, what a world! What a world! A couple of other little ones, and then we're going to take a break for your picks of the week. Apple is reportedly closing 2 of its retail outlets in Texas, in East Texas, because that's where the patent trolls live. The Eastern District of Texas is where a lot of patent cases go, because they have a friendly judge and they have friendly juries. In fact, when we were talking with strategy with our law firm about the podcast troll, we already knew that they had an office in Tyler, Texas, and they were about to, we'd have to go down there if they sued us there. So Apple has a store in Plano and Frisco, both expected to close April. The reason is, if you do business in the Eastern District, you can be called to court in the Eastern District. If you don't, then you can't.
Yeah, it's so brilliant, because not only for this eminently practical reason, but all they have to do is start, like, when people, they'll leave the webpage for those stores open by saying, "Oh, we're so sorry. We love we loved helping all of our customers in these 2 stores, but because of this litigation environment that these 4 lawmakers are currently responsible for, here are their phone numbers and email addresses. You're going to have to drive another 500 miles across what I know are rattlesnake infested Badlands."
It's the Dallas Galleria will be the closest.
Well, there you go. You talk about Badlands.
Badlands.
Well, what
I understand.
Does that mean they can't ship to them either? Like, are they basically leaving East Texas completely? Like,
I don't know.
Can't buy directly from Apple, even on the website.
I guess not, because we didn't have an office in East Texas. Adam Carolla, who did get sued in the Eastern District, didn't have an office there, but his podcasts were available there. So maybe that's all it takes. I don't know.
Turn off everybody's iCloud account that's in East Texas.
Yes.
that'll get some comments. Yeah,
Daniel here.
Enjoy your lawyer dome, everybody. Texas.
Apple has apparently, according again to Bloomberg and Mark Gurman, been testing sleep tracking in the Apple Watch. They never put any in. I think there are are there third-party sleep tracking apps?
Yeah.
You certainly have all the sensors you need. I don't want to wear a wristwatch to bed, but
Sleep Plus.
Okay.
But you can see them introducing this with a beautiful pajama band, right, Leo? Like, with the new sleep watch and our new Apple luxury pajama band. You put it on, it's so soft. It covers the underneath, and then you just sleep. And it's got battery life now. It lasts you through the night. You top it off while you're in the shower in the morning, and you're good to go for another whole day.
I always wear my
These keynotes
watch
write themselves.
because otherwise I can't turn off my alarm. The alarm goes off on my phone. My phone is really loud, and I haven't figured it.
So you turn it off from your watch.
And I just look down at my watch and I tap it, because otherwise I have to go find my phone, and that would be.
So you
Lori's
sleep
looking
with
for
your
pajama
Apple Watch
bands.
Yeah.
I charge it in the morning when I'm like.
Battery is not even. I can't wear something when I go to sleep.
I'm used to wear. I'm just used to wearing. I've worn a watch all the time for decades. So I guess I don't think about.
You're used to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're
My
just
last
used
watch
to
was
having
a lot
it on
heavier.
your wrist all the time. Yep, and I guess that sleep tracking would be for you exactly. I couldn't imagine wearing something to bed every single night. That I don't know. That just is too much for me. So for someone like me, the sleep tracking, I need my sleep tracking to be like a pad on my bed or a pillow or something like that, not something I wear on my wrist.
You need this, our sponsor, Aura. No, seriously, because I have to say, for instance, yesterday I got an amazing sleep score of 88, the highest sleep score I've gotten in weeks. Today I got 60, and I feel it. I could tell.
And what did you do differently?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I'll have to.
Oh, come on.
That's what you're supposed to figure out. Right. Is well, why?
Did you switch from beer to clear liquor before going to sleep? Because that's what did the trick for me.
I'll try it.
You can publish that tip if we get that as a sponsor.
I was sleeping better than I'd slept in a long time, and I think it was because I started taking melatonin like 4 or 5 hours before I go to bed, and that really does a small, tiny amount, 300 micrograms, but it really does make a difference. I don't know. Maybe last night I got disturbed. It was pouring rain. We had weird sounds and
a lot of wind.
There's a lot of wind. I think that's probably why. But see, I know because of that, and I don't. And while if you're used to wearing a watch, that would be a nice thing to have.
Right.
But if you're not used to wearing a watch, there are other choices, and it is. I could see why people would want to track that. Apple VP of Health, Dr. Sumbul Desai, in an interview with 9 to 5 Mac, talking ECG fall detection, their relationship with the FDA, and more. Actually, where was this interview? It was with Moby Health News. Sorry. Yeah. I got the wrong source. 9 to 5 wrote about it, and I can't find the article. So I'll have to give 9 to 5's a synopsis credit here. She says the feedback on the ECG has been pretty decent so far. I've heard some cardiologists say, yep, I started getting ECGs mailed to me right away. Their biggest frustration isn't around so much getting the ECG because they found that helpful, but it's that the health systems are still figuring out the right way to handle that type of incoming. Yeah, that's for sure true, right? They don't know what to do with patient-provided ECGs. Where does that go?
They're working with Stanford and Brand. She's the one I mentioned previously. Like, she's still a doctor. She still does something like 20% hospital time, and they have that entire division like the marketing person is a practicing doctor. They really want to make tools not for doctors but as doctors, which I think is neat.
She actually brought that up. She says, as a physician, I'll still see patients in the ER. A lot of times the questions we ask are, what kind of medications are you on? And so she really likes this new Apple Watch and Health Records initiative. Yeah. Because then she could see everything right away without even asking the patient. She says we're very early in that journey.
He loves it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he set his up. He loves it.
So you can do it now.
Always available.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Your physician or group would have to be supported, right?
Yeah, your institution, whatever, has to be set up with compatibility.
I'll have to ask. I'm with Kaiser, and they have an app, and I could see my records there. But it'd be really nice if it would, if there was some centralized.
Well, can you imagine being wheeled in there in pain, and all you have to do is just tap your Apple Watch? Like, you decide you want to share your records. They get all your medication, how you've taken it, what you're on, your health records, access to all of that stuff. When you are in no condition to give it.
Well, when you're unconscious, can they still just sort of lift your arm and just basically tap your Apple Watch against a pay console too?
We'd have to guard against that. We'd have to guard against that.
As long as you don't take the watch off before you have the heart attack. Keep the watch on.
Sorry.
With regards to fall detection, she says it is one of the most common reasons for people to go to the emergency room, not just with older people, across all age groups.
I've gone to the emergency room 3 times for falling.
Really?
Yeah. I fell out of a tree.
Oh.
I fell off a wall.
She says this happened to her, going up on your step stool to try to get some flour or sugar and having a fall, and that happens. Yeah. So she thinks fall detection is very important. Yeah. I wish I could get to the full interview, but Moby Health News has either pulled it down or changed the link because I'm getting a 404 when I go to that link.
Barn roofs are slippery.
as Red Green used to say, you found the short way down off the roof.
I did.
You found the quick way down
right off the edge. Yes. It was exciting.
This is it's too early to celebrate yet, but there is code in the iOS version of Google's Home app that says Apple Music will be coming to the Google Home at some point. It's not live yet. It just came to the Amazon Echo, so That would be really great. It makes you wonder, though, what Apple's long-term plans are for the HomePod. If all of these other guys could do exactly the same thing.
Maybe it really was about sound, like they said from the very beginning.
No, you're right.
I think it has more to say about their plans for Apple Music. It would be such it would almost be a demoralizing thing for the team that works on it if they said that no, we're not going to we're going to make sure that this remains locked into one hardware platform as opposed to speakers that will absolutely blow this home speaker out of the water, or things that more people can afford. It really is an endorsement of how good they think Apple Music is, that we don't need hardware lock-in to make it a success. And we want, if you got a speaker that's capable of streaming, we want it on your device.
Google's response to the article is, we have nothing to announce regarding updates.
Yes. It really, sometimes it's the worst of both worlds. Like, you have situations where Microsoft has to decide, is it going to license Exchange, which is going to hurt their enterprise business, or are they going to not license it, which could hurt their overall revenue, or BlackBerry with Bez and with BBM and all these things. And sometimes you make the wrong choice, and sometimes you make a choice that hurts one and not the other. But with this, Apple really never positioned HomePod as a very cheap, very convenient speaker. They said if you have a room with no sound, this will let you take it, drop it almost anywhere you want, and have great sound almost anywhere you stand. And if that's not the market for you, but you have Apple Music, especially if you have a family subscription and you have a whole bunch of Amazon and Google and Android and iOS, we want to make sure that Apple Music family subscription serves everyone in your family. Then it becomes a much more enticing offer. Doesn't hurt HomePod because you would probably never buy that anyway, but it significantly helps Apple Music.
Yeah.
Beautiful tribute to Steve Jobs on Sunday from Tim Cook. It was Steve's 64th birthday last Sunday. Steve's vision is reflected. This is, by the way, a great shot, starting with the reflecting pond. Steve's vision is reflected all around us at Apple Park. He would have loved it here in this place he dreamed up, the home and inspiration for Apple's future innovations. We miss him today on his 64th birthday. And every day, it's a reminder that he really died so young, in his 50s.
Yeah.
What a loss, not just to Apple but to all of us. So happy birthday, Steve. Wherever you are. I just hope there's acid up there.
He's up there going, these pearly gates are terrible. What you're going to do is take these down. We're going to start again with aluminum.
I can't believe you call this heaven.
Yeah, that cloud is entirely the wrong thought.
No, he's gonna appear in a vision to Johnny I and say, I'm sorry, you're supposed to be on Earth for another 30 years, but I just can't deal with product design in heaven anymore. I'm just going to have to take you here now.
I would, Apple has another bokeh ad, which is great. But I don't want to show it because last week we showed the bokeh ad, and we were taken down on YouTube for showing an Apple ad. So you're not getting a free ad from me, Apple. If you want to buy one, I'll be glad to sell you one. But
I like shooting us, and again, this is a law firm that was retained to do this stuff, and they don't think, there's absolutely no thought involved in it. I think it was actually
I think it was a content ID. Was it? Did we ever find out? Was it Carson or anybody? Was it Content ID? Or
we do not know.
We don't know. It's an automatic thing with Content ID, but if it's but you can get a more serious strike.
I think it happened to some movie trailers. Like Google. Yeah. Well, first, Google lost its mind over the last 2 weeks with YouTube. Like, they are taking down everything. Everything.
Well, for good reason. There's some really nasty stuff. It turns out on YouTube.
No, absolutely. But the way they detect stuff, like Linus from Tech Tips had his own channels, Content IDing his other channels.
Yeah, that was
3
weird.
or 4 days.
Well, yeah. So I'm not ready to blame Apple for this. YouTube's weird.
So the way, at least my understanding of the way YouTube works is that you can do nothing. You basically, when you put your content into it, as soon as you put your content into it, it hashes the video and hashes the audio, so it knows what to look for in anybody's feed. Then you set the settings. It's not like you set the settings for Twit to be one thing and somebody else, and there's no human that looks at it. But then you say, do nothing, track it, monetize it,
or take it down,
strike it.
Yeah,
and so sometimes, like, when someone hits you on a monetize, you can't actually change your video. So someone, like, there was one, like, this woman was dancing on at a wedding, and there was copywritten music, and that was set to monetize, and so it got 20 or 30 million views, and whoever's song it was the one that made all the money on it, and it literally adds the ad to it and makes the money on it. So that's and then the ones that are cooler, like the Miley Cyruses and the Katy Perrys, they just do track.
Usually you can. Usually you can cut stuff out. Does it turn off the edit button?
No. Well, it depends. That's if it's doing if that's the strike. If it's the strike, you can use the edit button to cut it out. But if it's the monetize, you can't touch it. Like you don't own that video anymore, even if it's on your channel. And then track is just you just know where your song or your thing is everywhere, but you don't do anything with it. And that's the folks that are the most savvy use track.
Yeah. But apparently there was a big problem with the ML and with a whole bunch of other stuff over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to say, I think maybe my mistake was naming the show after the ad. Why do you hate Jacob? Which I thought was a great name.
Also, sometimes if there's a source, like if it says source Apple on top of the video, they don't touch it, or Apple, whoever it is, if there's no attribution, then the whole thing is screwed.
I showed it full screen as if it was an Apple ad.
I mean, typically,
maybe
if
that's
you
where
frame
I
it,
went wrong.
if you just frame it in a little bit or over to the side.
But I don't look. It's just to be clear.
It's commentary. It's fair use.
It's completely legitimate use. It's commentary. We did comment during it and afterwards. And we're a news organization, so obviously we disputed it and then it got put back up. But
that's when
I don't want to have to. This is the discussion we've had
it's
internally.
A pain in the butt.
Well, it's not even a pain in the butt. I kind of resist the notion that we should give in to any of this because it's our right to do it.
Yep.
And so I just want to assert our right to do it.
But that's when you're seeing a human. It's a computer until you argue with it. You're seeing the computer is just doing what it's told to do. And then as soon as you argue with it, then a human says, "Okay, what's going on?"
And it was immediately
never mind.
immediately restored. Yeah.
That's why tech laws are a lot like security updates, where you can't just do the Digital Millennium Copyright Act in 1997 and then never update it, because in 97 the exception that allows Google to simply allow people to upload videos, and if someone has their copyrighted content up there, gives them the ability to simply have them strike it and pull it down, didn't anticipate that it would be possible for dumb algorithms to do it just automatically. Also didn't anticipate a world in which there would be a financial incentive for bad people to maliciously issue copyright strikes. And that's why this is one of many problems that Google is trying to deal with on YouTube these days.
Yeah, and of course, get ready because the EU, the European Parliament, is about to vote on their new copyright law, which includes an article, Article 13, that would require us and everybody else. There's no fair use at all. Require us and everybody else to buy licenses for any copyright content we want to use, and require people like YouTube and Facebook and Twitter proactively to prevent anything copyrighted from going up there, whether it be a meme or fair use commentary from a news site. And if that passes, I don't know what we're going to do, because the
EU is not going to have any more video.
I think all of our content on Twit, audio and video, is based on commentary of other people's copyrighted works. I don't know what the hell we're going to do, except
most of the stuff is, Leo. It's
almost everything is.
Every movie critic site, just everything.
When you write an article about Pokemon Go with images from Pokemon Go,
yes,
completely legitimately, that would be taken down. So if you're in the EU and you want to keep hearing Twit and reading iMore and all the rest, it might be a good idea to write your member of parliament and say, wait a minute.
And I think those copyright holders feel like somehow those people are going to come back to them.
Oh, no, they're in trouble. Nope. There's not going to be content.
Not going to turn out well.
Can't do it.
No.
We're going to see a digital Brexit, where I hope that media companies simply say, here's how much money it's going to cost us to implement all of this, and not only with technology but also in lost business. Here's how much money we will lose every year if we just simply say that all EU states don't get access to YouTube. And we think that millions of people in the EU will say, this was a dumb idea, lawmakers. We would like you to fix that.
Yeah. It's kind of a mess.
It's untenable. It's a scary thing. I'm talking about it on Friday.
The good news is I'm starting to see activists in the EU saying, because there is an election coming up, we're not going to vote for anybody who votes for Article 11 and 13. So
good.
That would be, maybe that'll get them to sit up and take notice.
If just every 13-year-old in the PewDiePie army would vote against this, we would 86 million votes.
That's never going to happen. Hey, let's take a break. And if you would, Lory Gil of imore.com.
That's me.
Managing editor there. Rene Ritchie of the now year-old Vector Show at imore.com/Vector. Happy birthday. Andy Ihnatko of Boston Public Radio, WGBH, and Alex Lindsay who's his own man, at Alex Lindsay on the Twitter, pixelcore.com.
I'm my own boss.
He's his own man. If you would prepare your picks, I will tell everybody about my pick, which is the amazing molecular air purifier. We moved to the country about 5 years ago, and I had never had allergies. I don't think Lisa had allergies. She had allergies, not to anything airborne anyway, to pollen. All of a sudden, she started getting sinus headaches about 3 or 4 years ago on a regular basis, and we looked for everything. We tried all kinds of filters, and she lives on Allegra. but then we found the Molecule. The Molecule is an amazing air purifier, and it really works. Molecule has replaced 50 years of antiquated air purifying technology. You've heard of HEPA filters. That was invented in the 40s, and it's really just a filter that filters particles out, traps them, and stores them. Molecule uses PICO technology, photoelectrochemical oxidation, which goes way beyond the HEPA filter, to both capture and then, I love this, eliminate particles 1,000th of the size that HEPA filters can catch. So it's not just trapping them and storing them, it's eliminating allergens, mold, even bacteria and viruses. Molecule makes it easier to cope with asthma and allergies, significantly reduces symptoms. It sure did for us. One customer said after using the Molecule, she was able to breathe through her nose for the first time in 15 years. Suffer no longer. The technology was funded by the EPA, extensively tested by real people, verified by third parties and university labs like the University of South Florida's Center for Biological Defense, the University of Minnesota's Particle Calibration Lab. It's beautiful, too. It's got a cast aluminum body. It's just gorgeous. I can control it via Wi-Fi. It also supports Bluetooth. It's also got a control on the top that lets you turn it on and off, and you choose the size of the room, things like that. Some people call it sometimes the Apple of air purifiers. It's so beautiful. And it's so easy to change the pre-filter and then that PICO filter, that metal tube you see there. And what I love, if you do pair it with a Wi-Fi, it will actually note the level and the replacement time, and they'll ship you replacements just in time. So you get it, put it in because you know you need it. It's awesome. The Molecule really works. Whisper quiet, energy efficient. And for a long time when we were doing the ads, they were sold out. I'm glad to say now they've stepped up production, and they're now meeting demand, which is great. So if you want a Molecule, you can get one right now at molekulE.com and save $75 with the offer code MacBreak. Molecule.com, promo code MacBreak. This is the only air purifier that actually destroys those evil compounds in your air. And the air smells great, I have to say. We were so glad we had them all. In fact, we liked it so much we got one for our 16-year-old in his bedroom. We have one in the studio. And we were glad because when they had the fires in up north here, it was so smoky in the air. And people would actually come here to work just because they could breathe. You couldn't breathe outside. Molecule.
That's what made me get one, Leo.
Yeah, really? You got one?
I got one. I had friends who were in the fires, and they were like scientist chemistry friends, and they were holding their detectors outside, and they were blowing up and then holding it on the Osmo, and they were neutral. And
you
I
can
ordered
see
it that day.
It makes a big difference.
Yeah,
MOLEKULE, molecule.com. Promo code is MacBreak. Let's get, Rene, why don't you start it off with your pick of the week?
All right, I was just pasting it in the doc, so I apologize, Karsten. But this is and full disclosure, I haven't ordered this yet. It is the Osmo Pocket. And I've been trying for a long time to get better at B-roll because I'm doing the YouTube thing. And I feel like I'm okay just yakking at the camera, but I'm not very good at B-roll yet. But Osmo, I tried the different Osmo things. You put your phone on it, you hold it, and you try to steady it. And I have a couple of those, but I've never been good at it. But the Osmo Pocket, you can use it by itself. You can also put it into like God mode by attaching your phone to it. And a bunch of friends of mine, a bunch of colleagues of mine got it. And we had a big Mobile Nations meetup a couple of weeks ago. And there were like 3 or 4 of them there. And I got to see them in action. And it's just so small, so easy to hold, so useful by itself, but really so much better when you have your phone attached to it. And if there is an Apple event, and if it isn't, I'm not going to walk around with this and just look at news apps.
Maybe I'd still be going to Apple events if I'd had one of those in 2010.
I know, right? Yes. Yeah, totally. I mean, it's small. It goes in your pocket. It's easy to carry with you, and it's got a lot of capabilities.
It's a gimbal. Just for people who don't understand what it is, it's a gimbal, which is a stabilizer with its own built-in camera. You don't mount your phone on it. It has its own camera.
You can, though. You can mount your phone to do all sorts of extra things with it as well.
You can have the camera send the video to the phone.
Yes. Yeah. I think there's been other, like DxO had something like that previously, but
and DJI sells a phone-sized gimbal, the original Osmo. For me still, Leo. It's clunky. I had this. And I loved it. I couldn't find much use for it because I don't know, I'm an idiot. So I sent it to Odocta, Owen J.J. Stone. He's going to do a review.
Nice.
Yeah, he's going to do a review for us for Hands on Tech. But what I shot with it, I was really impressed by its stabilizing. It really does a good job.
Yeah, and this is exactly because you guys know what it's like at any event when you're in that back room. Like you've got one guy streaming on Twitter about to kill you, another person streaming on Facebook, not even looking at you. You're ducking. You're trying to get past David Pogo. We'll put down that iPhone for an hour to save his life, and it's just there's nothing else that you can do. And something small like this, I figure I can go around the giant broadcast people and just sneak all the footage, and that's my hope.
No, it's really cute. It's really cool. I love it. It comes in a nice case. It seems pretty durable. When it's time for me to take our shows on the road, that's definitely how I want to do it. I think it's really cool.
I'm going to order one. The problem is I have an iPhone one, and I have the last version of the Osmo, and
I have the big boy one.
Yeah, I have the big one, and so I have with all of those, and so I've been like, oh, do I really need it? But I've now had a couple friends like Rene that have used them, and they just pull them out of their pocket, and I'm like.
Yep. I know.
And what I do a lot with it is if we're doing events and we want some B-roll, the guys are shooting. I got guys with big cameras over their shoulder, and they're shooting a bunch of B-roll, and I just walk around and just grab a couple things. And what we find is that, number one, is I'm amazed that I can actually cut my footage in, and it still works. But the second thing is that it's more intimate in a lot of ways because you're just
it doesn't look like a big camera.
You don't get everybody's attention, and you can kind of do little things behind people that you can't do with a big camera, and so
you just don't get the depth of field. It's about all of it. But I don't hate Jacob, so I don't need to bouquet.
Right.
4K,
you don't
60
know
frames.
Jacob the way that the rest of us know Jacob.
Yeah. And here's an example in this image of how intimate it is. You really could have a conversation, an interview. Talk to somebody, and it doesn't get in between you. It's smaller even than your phone, really.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. I agree with you. $350. Our full review will be coming soon to Hands On.
I think they have a bunch of accessories now. I was starting to look.
They
at
have waterproof now. They have a case. See, I might have kept it had I known that because that would be fun to have.
Do they have is that dog collar mount a actual purchasable item or something they just jerry-rigged?
Are you looking for squirrels, Andy? Are you asking for a squirrel friend?
Squirrel friend wants to know. Lory Gil, your pick of the week.
Yeah, so I am a terrible artist. I am terrible at drawing. I cannot draw for anything to save my life. So if you're like me and you have an iPad Pro with an Apple Pencil and you feel like a chump because you can't draw on it, Shadow Draw is this fun little app that I discovered that teaches you how to just do simple line drawing, sketch drawings. It does each line and then you just trace over it. So it's kind of showing you, okay, if you want to do perspective, it'll show you, the baseline and the horizon line, and it'll show you where you should put it.
Well, that's neat.
So if you redo these over and over again, then you start to learn for yourself, how you should be separating the eye, how far apart they should be and where the ears on a head should go and things like that. And it starts with, you can have like really, really simple sketches that are just really basic lessons, or you can go kind of to the max and go much more complicated and get, movement drawing and things like that. And it's only, real basic. You're not learning how to draw, but you're certainly learning how to draw better than I learned how to draw because I'm terrible at it. And this has really just given me some great, it's like tracing, but it gives you line by line tracing instead of having to just like copy over something. It'll show you, okay, here's what you should do next. Here's the next line that you should make. So there you go. And it's free to download and you pay for the lessons. So I think the lessons are usually a couple dollars each, maybe $3.99, I think, if I recall. And then that set of lessons usually comes with like 3 or 4 or 5 little drawing things to do with it. And you can pick which ones you want.
I do need that because, like you, I have a pencil and an iPad Pro, and I can't draw to save my life.
I keep saying I would pay $1 million for How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way for iPad Pro. If you're listening, Marvel.
Yes.
If you are listening,
yes,
just make that.
Rene has $1 million for you.
It's Canadian dollars. I think that's like $350, like you said, for American.
All right, Andy Ihnatko, your pick.
Actually, mine ties in really, really nicely with the previous one. I bought myself a new little toy. I bought myself my first graphics tablet from the Mac that I've had in 10 years. This is the Wacom Intuos tablet. Actually, they make this in small and large sizes. I got the smaller one because I could get it for just $80. It was there's a wired version that's even less expensive than this, and it reminded me of how unique and cool an actual graphics tablet is. Particularly if, like me, you're trying to be more ambitious and about creating artwork with Photoshop. Because I've got my iPad Pro, I've got an Apple Pencil. I can even just like use that as a touch screen as a pencil screen for Photoshop, or use apps that are directly on it. I forgot the cool thing about an actual graphics tablet is that you can your hand and the pen do not get in the way of you seeing what it is you're doing, because not only is the tablet on the table while the screen is in front of your face, but also I totally forgot that the pen actually hovers over the surface as you're drawing it, and so you can actually see the crosshairs or the tip of the tool just sort of like hovering over until you decide to actually make contact and do something about it. It has, of course, a cajillion levels of pressure sensitivity, so that if you're doing like touching up a photo, you press a little bit harder for like more light to be dumped onto the section of someone's face, or for less sharpening to happen. It also has multiple buttons on the side of it. The other really nice thing about it, again, as opposed to whatever jury-rig thing that I was using before, is that it has 5 clicky buttons that you can define on the top of it. So I can basically keep one of my hands, keep like my thumb on one side of the tablet, and just press one of these clicky buttons to switch between is this going to be an eraser tool to undo what I just did, or is this going to be an ink tool, or is this going to be a selection tool? And I'm having an absolute ball with it. I bought it. The wire cutter recommendations that I looked at was, though they're recommending like the $300 version of this, which is fine, but it was more of an investment than I wanted to put in after not using a device like this for 10 years. But this is something you can easily afford. You can easily play with. Drawing things freehand is now a really credible thing to do. Whenever I'm creating just clip art or just annotating something, it's rarely been off. I've not lost this pen in the 2 weeks I've had this, because it's always like right there on top of the tablet next to my keyboard, because I keep using it and using it. So I'm really, really, really happy with it.
Nice.
And it's a Wacom, so it works with everything. You don't have to worry about. You also might be tempted by these like off-brand tablets that cost less money and they're bigger and they have more buttons, but maybe it'll work with what you want to do, but maybe it won't. But it's Wacom. The drivers work with everything.
Scooter X predicted a pick for you, Alex. I know you're not picking it. It looks like you're playing with Shadow Draw.
I was listening to it. It's really cool. With my finger. I didn't have my pen with me. It's great.
You want to borrow mine?
Yeah, I have to pair it.
Oh, yeah.
Throw it on?
I don't know.
Anyway.
Can you lend somebody a pencil? So he was saying...
I haven't. The only reason I didn't recommend it yet is because I don't own it yet. You're talking about the new Ricoh Theta Z1.
So we've owned several of the Ricoh Thetas, and this is a 360-degree camera. But this is an expensive version, a $1,000 version that they say is their new top of the line. The thing that intrigues me is live streaming in 4K, and I almost tempted to get it just to see if we could. What do you think, John? We could just set it up right here, and people could be sitting. Well,
I can live stream in stereo 4K.
We won't say. Oh, it has 4 mics too, which means it has surround sound.
Amazonic.
Should I? What do you think?
Oh yeah, it's a given.
You're asking Alex.
No,
I'm asking the wrong guy.
This is probably the best sub $3,000.
So I
out there.
have,
So
and I've never used it. I have the GoPro one.
It's the best one under 4 hours.
Yeah, here's the thing: is the GoPro one takes a long time to process. I own.
That's
both.
my issue.
I own both.
Yeah,
it's a little.
That's what I'm asking you.
So it's a little. One of the advantages of the GoPro is that it has
nice stabilization.
The stabilization is really good. It takes a long time to process, though. And
it's got wonky software, I have to say.
It's not. This is just like what you see. It's WYSIWYG. Now I haven't used the Z1, but I have the 5, I have the SC, I have the S, I have the M15, I have all of them. And this has been the one that has stayed in my backpack.
Maybe I'll get it.
I've had some version of that.
Yeah.
I'm going to get one as soon as it comes out. I think it ships in mid-April. And
okay.
A couple things there is that what they've done is they're shooting 4K 29.97. That may not seem like a big deal, but everybody else has cheated on that. So say the Gear is shooting at like 20. They're all shooting at 24, not because 24 is a filmmaking thing, is because they can't get the processor to go fast enough with the heat and battery and everything else. And so Theta has figured out how to do that. The seamlessness of the Theta is usually better than everybody else's. What they're actually doing is going on, there's 2 halves onto one chip, and with mirrors, little mirrors in there. And the 23 megapixels, so 6720 by 3360 is a lot of pixels for an image. And they're now doing DNG RAW. So you're able to get a lot of data there. If you're a computer graphics artist, being able, I don't know if their software does it, but there's third-party software that will do bracketing. So it'll do 10 exposures across the Theta, and that's what I probably use it for as much as anything else. Is you set it out in a scene and you let it bracket, and you can build these HDR domes, which is how I got into doing it in the first place. The video's great. I think that I'm excited about this one because the video has always been pretty good, and I've used it. I think that the streaming is going to be pretty cool.
How's their software?
The software's great.
Because GoPro's software was so execrable.
Theta, there's 2 things. One is Theta has great software on your iPhone. It's going to geotag stuff. If you take pictures with your iPad, or if you're with your iPhone controlling the Theta, it'll geotag all of those photos for you.
That's nice. So it has GPS in it?
No, it's using your phone's GPS.
Oh, I get it.
So you just know where those things are.
Yeah.
The software's really good. They've got an open API so that if you want to develop your own software to do it, and there are other developers that's why there's just that bracketing software was written by somebody else. A couple of different people have written HDR, but you can write your own software. In fact, they have little competitions on how to write for the Theta. And so it's the best all around. And what I use it for probably more than anything else is I go on a lot of site surveys. I go to places where I have to figure out how I'm going to do an event in this space, and I just hold it over my head and take lots of photos.
Right.
And then we go back and we look at it later, and I don't have to figure it out.
Stills. I like it that it has 4 quadrant microphones, so you can have surround. Each records independently. It says.
I've been doing a fair bit of ambisonic research.
Yeah.
And it's a little oversold. Here's the thing is that we had a situation where we had a bunch of mics that we put out into the environment. So they're in an area where there's a lot of things going on, and by moving the mics out into the world and then bringing them in and mixing them in 3D, it was much more impressive.
You do want a 3D soundstage. It's not that. It's just it's better to have it out there than on the camera.
Yeah, it's cheating. Admittedly, you're kind of pulling sounds from different places, and where it gets really complicated is when you cut. If you're building an edit and you're cutting between cameras, you have to change that phase. You have to change it. So what we had to do is we had to tie our switcher into our mixer, and so the mixer scene changes every time.
But to be fair, when you watch a baseball game in surround, they have microphones in the
everywhere.
Crowd. They're all over.
Like an average game will have 20 to 30 mics that are field mics out there, and so and those produce an incredible.
That's why the guy selling the peanuts is behind you, and the ball hits the bat. It's right there, and that's really good spatiality.
It's good. But this is the best all around camera. If you're looking for one, I was just talking to somebody who wanted to do some location tours. And when this came out, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure what the best one is right now. And when this one came out, I was like, okay, and they're obviously releasing it right before NAB because this is and they're going for a professional. I think what they're also finding is there's not a lot of consumers buying these cameras. No. So selling at $350 doesn't make any sense anymore.
Yeah.
So they're putting all the extra beef into it to make it more professional, and they're selling it into a professional market. And I think that.
Do you think when they say it can stream live, they mean it?
Oh, yeah, you probably can. I mean, what it streams live. So what is the temporal compression? What is the spatial compression? You know, those are the things we don't know.
They say it's an excellent quality, real-looking image. It's not real. It's real-looking. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hijack your pick, but I think Scooter X said it should be.
Once we get it, we'll do a head-to-head with an Ozo.
Yeah, I would really like to, because that was what, $30,000. $60.
The first one was 60. Well, here's the best part. The first one I bought was 60. The second two were 30 each, and the last three were 7.5.
And you can't buy them now,
which is why I still use them. The Ozos are still the best live 360
that was from
cameras. Nokia, yeah. And so,
but I wonder if now we're getting $1,000 something that's almost Ozo quality.
It's just doesn't do stereo.
Right.
So what I can't do with these that I can do with an Ozo is
3D.
Number one is I can do 3D 360, and I can cut it live, and I have full control over exposure and stitching and everything else over a web interface. I mean, that kind of stuff is not what this provides, but it's also $1,000, and you can put it in your backpack. And so it's a great. It looks incredible.
Okay, so Rene, you get the DJI Osmo Pocket. I will get the Ricoh Theta Z1. And then we'll just see what happens. So this isn't available for a couple months, which is good because I have some folding phones to buy. Alex, Lindsay, your pick of the week.
So one of the things we do a lot of is we do a lot of live events, and one of the problems you get into is you get to the end of the live event and your client wants to build a sizzle reel. So they want to take the 3-hour event and they want to bring it down to 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes or 4 minutes. So what you have to do that is you typically take that video and you send it to a transcription company that you pay them about $200, and then they send $200 to $300, and they send it back to you the next day, and you have your transcription, and it's got time code and it's got all these little bits and pieces into it, and then you send it to the client. The client highlights what they want, and then they send it back to you. So that's the process by which it typically goes in. What this software does, this is a software called Simon Says. It does all that in the cloud or on-premise if you have enough money. I don't know exactly what the price is. We haven't done it on-premise yet. So if you're working on a film, you can do it there. But what Simon Says does here is for 12.5 cents a minute, which is kind of incredible. You can now have everything transcribed. The accuracy, we just used it on a project, and the accuracy is very high. Probably not quite as high as a transcription service, but it was plenty for what we're doing it for. What we were doing it for was, to make decisions about that. But if you want to use it, you can also do translations. If you want to use this for captions and other pieces like that. Being able to do this cost effectively and automatically, and then you can also bring it back in and have it reinserted into Premiere and Final Cut, Avid.
That's a good price. I mean, so that I could do this show for $15.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
We might have to do that.
Yeah. It's really powerful, and they've got a bunch of stuff coming that will make it even better.
It's computer transcription, I presume, not human.
It is computer transcription, and that's why it costs 12 cents a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. And it's
they work cheap.
So you can pay as you go, and it's 25 cents a minute. So if you want to test it, you can do that. But if you think, it's usually cheaper just to get the monthly rate and then pay the 12.5 cents a minute if you're doing any major amount of this. But if you're working on the kind of things where you're shooting videos and you just wish you had captioning, or you want to use it for assemblies, or you want to use it for those, putting those things together, it's awesome.
Wow.
So anyway. That's my pick.
Yeah, I'm going to send this off to Lisa. This would be really useful for us. Yeah. It can also transcribe and translate, right?
Yeah, you can translate. And one of the things to think about is if you're doing stuff for, a lot of us think about it for translation or captioning for ADA, right?
Yes. Right.
But, and it's required. Like if you're a government agency or you're a broadcaster, you have to put captions in. A lot of people now are putting captions in because a lot of people, when you put a video up on Facebook or you put a video on YouTube, people look at it on Facebook, and if they don't see the captions, they just keep moving on. They want to see what is in the video before they commit to opening the sound.
Will this print it onto the video?
Yeah, you can. Well, it'll bring it back to Final Cut, and then you can insert it as captions, and it's all time coded, and it all just goes in.
Can you do it as closed captions? I guess you could.
Yeah,
right?
You can export an SRT file, and then that's what you need to insert into that. And you can of course you can have it exported out into a document. You can fix little bits and pieces that you wanted to fix and put it back in. So that's, it's a very fast and effective way. And again, nowadays, if you're putting anything on Facebook, you really have to put it. And Twitter and to some degree YouTube, you want to have
or Instagram
captions.
For sure.
Yeah, you want to have captions
people,
in there.
Have the sound turned off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're making decisions, and sometimes a lot of people never turn the sound on. Like what we see as a behavior where people are watching for 2 or 3 minutes, and they're not ever turning the audio on.
I do that all the time.
Yep.
Mostly because that's in the middle of the night and I don't want to wake up
exactly.
my wife. Thank you. That's a great pick. Simon Says. It's simonsays.ai. And that is the end of that. Lory Gil, thank you so much for making your way down here and joining us today. She's Appaholic, APPAHOLIK, on the Twitter, managing editor at iMore, and a rock and roll singer.
Oh no, are we gonna do that again?
Well, we don't have to.
I found this amazing video of one of our shows in a backyard. That was pretty fun.
Did you did you get some fans come by your last show that you plugged?
Not that they came to me and said.
So next time, just come up and say hi. Don't be shy. So where is this video from the backyard? Is it on YouTube? Is this?
I found it on Facebook, actually. I don't know who did it. It just kind of popped up in my feed. So sorry, I can't tell you how to find it.
Tweet it, because I don't have Facebook and I can't watch things on Facebook. So
okay. But our next show is at Momo's in Sacramento on Friday, March 1st. This Friday.
And the name of the band?
Sick Burn.
Sick Burn.
What time are you playing?
Yes. Maybe this is a new venue for me. I've never played there before, so after 8 and before midnight.
Yeah, they should never give times for rock and roll shows. It's just a recipe for disappointment. Yeah.
Because I think there's a game. Isn't there? The Kings are playing, I think, on Friday.
Come on over after the Kings game. Come to Momo's.
How far away is Momo's from the arena?
It's not less than 2 miles. It's not far.
Yeah, Momo's in San Francisco is right across the street. So, yeah. Nice. Thank you, Lory. Always a pleasure. Thank you, Rene. Ritchie. Stay warm. Don't let them ice you up.
I am not a singer, nor can I play one on TV or at Momo's. Just make that clear.
If you go to imore.com/Vector, you can help celebrate the 1-year birthday, the 1-year anniversary of the Vector podcast. It feels like you've been doing longer than that. That's not very long.
The audio podcast for longer. The video one is just gone a year.
Video. That's right. Yeah, that makes sense. Always great stuff. Always great stuff.
Thank you so much.
Highly recommended. And his Pokemon Go coverage is also non-pareil. If you know what that means.
Not for nothing, Laporte.
Not for nothing. And Ihnatko, listen to him every week on WGBH Boston. That is public radio in Boston. And find his work at ihnatko.com. Anything else you want to plug? Your Material podcast.
Yep. As with the amazing Florence Ion, we will be talking lots. The word folding and impractical will come up a lot during tomorrow's taping. I'm sure. I'm going to be on, of course, on NPR on Friday. I think we're doing 12:30 at the Boston Public Library. So drop by. They have a really cool coffee shop, and there's lots of cool art to look at. And once again, but tell everybody that I wasn't using notes or a screen at all. I was actually just coming up with everything off the top of my head. I will buy you, I won't buy a cookie, but I'll split a cookie with you if you promise to do that.
Very nice. Very nice. And Mr. Alex Lindsay, any plugs for you, sir?
No, I'm just happy to be here.
He's just happy to be here. You should follow him on Twitter, though. You never know what's going to happen there. He's always talking about new stuff at AlexLindsay. I
think I actually just posted the Z1 this morning. I was just like, because it just got announced, and I was like, this is amazing. Yeah, anyway.
I want to get it now. I wish it were available. So when did you say?
I think it's mid-April. That's what I think Amazon or B&H looked like it was pre-selling.
My wallet might recover by then.
Yep.
Our show. Anybody should do any cold weather and windy weather testing? Because I've got an outlet here that.
Yeah. I'll get it. I'll never use it, and then I'll send it to you for review. That's kind of how it works around here.
It's blocking the fire exits. I'm saving lives by taking this stuff off your hands.
I should just eliminate the middleman and send it right to you, Andy.
I will say that the Theta plus the DJI is kind of like the ultimate little travel kit.
No.
Yeah, to media travel kit.
No.
Yeah.
We do MacBreak Weekly every Tuesday right here. I hope you will come and join us. If you want to watch it live, it's about 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. That'd be 1900 UTC. And you can just go to twit.tv/live. There's audio and video streams there. You can take your pick. If you are watching or listening live, you should join us in the chat room where everybody else is while they're watching and listening live. That's irc.twit.tv. You can use your browser or an IRC client. irc.twit.tv. On-demand versions of MacBreak Weekly and all our shows are available at our website. In this case, twit.tv/mbw. You can also subscribe because, we've been around a few years, and that means every podcast app should know about us. Just look for MacBreak Weekly. Press the subscribe button, and you'll have it the minute it's available, usually Tuesday afternoon. Don't forget, last chance to take our survey, twit.to/survey19. If you haven't done it, it's our annual survey of our audience just to get to know you a little bit better, help us make programming decisions, and help us convince advertisers that this is a good place to advertise. It keeps us alive. twit.to/survey19. No obligation. No salesman will call. We're not tracking you. It's nice to know. But you don't have to if you don't want to. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time. But now I'm sorry to say it's time to get back to work because MacBreak Weekly is over. Bye-bye.